Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 751a. Difficult decision. Almost as soon as Aizen Sosok finished speaking, the white hollow matter that emerged from the 7 orifices of Kuroseki Masaki, who was held in the arms of Kuroseki Ishin, suddenly increased dramatically. Moreover, the spiritual pressure emitted by Kuroseki Masaki gradually began to produce the feeling of hollow. Masaki. Mother. The faces of Kuroseki Ishin and Kuroseki Ichigo showed visibly lost expressions. And Aizen Sosok spread his hands as if he had completed a perfect masterpiece and said, "Makao, besides me and Urahara Kisuke, you seem to be the only one in the world who can suppress hollows, right? So, as a former doctor, what choice will you make? Will you choose to continue the unfinished battle with me, or choose to save Kuroseki Masaki?" After a pause, Aizen Sosok continued. Of course, it is understandable that Makao-kun didn't save Kuroseki Masaki. After all, as a god of death, Makao-kun's relationship with the queency is not harmonious. However, Kuroseki Makao once risked his life to break into the Hutomundo to save you. Kuroseki Masaki should be an important person to Kuroseki Makao, right? Without waiting for Senju Makao to answer, in the eyes of Kuroseki Ichigo and Kuroseki Ishin, Kuroseki Makao seemed to be completely enraged and shouted, "Aizen, you despicable bastard!" Then, Kuroseki Makao controlled the thousands of spirit arrows in his hand and released them again. However, the direction of the spirit arrows was completely different from the location of Aizen Sosok in the eyes of the Kuroseki father and son. However, the Kuroseki father and son could no longer care about other things at this moment, but looked at Senju Makao with a little hope. Senju Makao has the ability to stop the hollowization. Suddenly, Ishin Kuroseki recalled that when he was talking with Kisuke Urahara once mentioned that when Shinigami such as Hirako Makao were transformed into hollows, Makao Senju played a very important role in their treatment. And that time was 100 years ago. Makao Senju had not been a disciple of Unohana Retsu for long, and he had not even served as the vice captain yet. After that, Makao Senju's medical skills gradually became famous throughout the Seireitei, and he became an authoritative representative of medical skills on par with Unohana Retsu. Therefore, it is very likely that Makao Senju really has the ability to treat hollows. Under the gaze of Ichigo Kuroseki and Ishin Kuroseki, Makao Senju's face clearly flashed with hesitation, and then he seemed to have made a quick decision and spoke. "Ishin, Ichigo, you guys hurry up and take Madame Kuroseki back to the Seireitei. Madame Kuroseki's condition can't be delayed any longer, otherwise once her self-consciousness is completely devoured, it will be terrible." Ishin Kuroseki and Ichigo Kuroseki were stunned at first, and then their faces showed ecstasy, realizing that Makao Senju meant to make the treatment of Masaki Kuroseki the first priority. Then, the expressions of the Kuroseki father and son were moved, but also ashamed. Makao Senju's decision was undoubtedly under tremendous pressure. Obviously, this was definitely the opportunity that Makao Senju had been waiting for a long time to seal Aizen Sosok, and it was also an opportunity for the whole world to no longer suffer from the threat of Aizen Sosok. However, for the sake of their Kuroseki family, Makao Senju gave up so resolutely. At this moment, even the most mature and rational Ishin Kuroseki couldn't help but redden his eyes. However, seeing that Kuroseki Masaki's condition was still getting worse, Kuroseki Ishin gritted his teeth and rushed into the passage behind Senju Makao holding Kuroseki Masaki. And Senju Makao naturally would not forget his benefactor, and shouted in the direction of Kuroseki Makao. "Mr. Kuroseki Makao, you come too, let's go back to Soul Society." However, under the gaze of Kuroseki Ichigo, Ishidori and Chidori Asutora, Kuroseki Makao shook his head and said, "No, I'm no longer a human and can't go back to the real world. I'm not a Shinigami, so it's meaningless to stay in Soul Society. It's better to stay in Hutomundo and continue my destiny as a queency." And, Kuroseki Makao's voice turned angry and said, "The grudge between me and Aizen has not been settled yet, and the GOTY 13 also needs someone to keep Aizen in check. I'll repay Vice Captain Senju for saving Masaki in this way." As soon as these words came out, Kuroseki Ichigo and Ishidori suddenly widened their eyes and wanted to persuade Kuroseki Makao However, as if he had guessed what Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashita were thinking, Kurosaki Makoto spoke first. Rick, you are very good. I have always treated you as my own son. It's just a pity that I can't continue to watch you grow up, but I know your destination is definitely not this. If possible, I hope you will stop hating the god of death. Let the hatred left in history be buried in history. In an instant, these words that were almost a farewell made Ishitari's expression almost collapse. Uncle Kurosaki, I know. Then, Kurosaki Makoto changed his tone and continued. Ichigo, your growth has really surprised me, and your potential is far more than that. Your only shortcoming is that you are too confused. You often don't know why you are fighting and why you are holding the blade in your hand. Ichigo, in fact, you just need to understand that there are many things that cannot be avoided, whether it is fate or danger. You shouldn't be confused, and you don't even need to think too much about things that are not necessary for your age. It is enough to firmly believe in protecting the people you cherish. These words are full of PUA and inducement, but on the surface they reveal concern and reluctance, which undoubtedly made Ichigo Kurosaki's tears flow uncontrollably. However, suddenly, Makoto Senju suddenly controlled several giant wooden palms to slap towards the empty area, as if he was stopping something, and shouted. Aizen, don't forget that your illusion is meaningless in front of me. You will never succeed in taking advantage of the opportunity to attack Kurosaki Makoto. After being interrupted, Kurosaki Makoto seemed to understand that his presence would be a burden. Then, under the gaze of Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishitari, Kurosaki Makoto quickly disappeared from the spot while Senju Makoto was holding back Aizen Sasuke. Senju Makoto, who seemed to be confronting Aizen Sasuke, kept a vigilant posture after confirming something and spoke. Let's go too. Then, after Chagasutra dragged Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishitari into the passage, Senju Makoto slowly retreated into the passage, and then led them quickly back to the direction of Soul Society. Chapter 752 Responsibility. Soon, under the protection of Senju Makoto, they successfully brought Kurosaki Ichigo, Ishitari and Chagasutra back to the Seireitei, but the situation on this side was quite bad. Several captains who had originally assembled and were about to attack the Kainiac Palace surrounded Kurosaki Masaki. The signs of hollowing on Kurosaki Masaki almost covered half of his body, and the spiritual pressure emanating from his body was not much different from that of a hollow. Moreover, the amazing spiritual pressure of Kurosaki Masaki made any captain extremely vigilant. If it weren't for Kurosaki Ishin who had been blocking Kurosaki Masaki, causing many captains to hesitate, I'm afraid that some captains would have been unable to resist and killed Kurosaki Masaki first. The return of Senju Makoto changed the scene. Master Senju, why are you back? Master Makoto, how is the situation over there? Did something happen? Has the plan to attack Kuroiru been cancelled? The captains asked questions one after another, which made the Kurosaki father and son look particularly embarrassed. If it wasn't for the treatment of Kurosaki Masaki that caused Makoto Senju to retreat, at the time, as long as Makoto Senju could firmly restrain Aizen Sasuke, and then many captains would rush to the battlefield as reinforcements, the chance of completely sealing Aizen Sasuke this time would undoubtedly be great. However, all these plans had to come to an abrupt end because of the Kurosaki family. However, Makoto Senju did not explain so much, but walked quickly to the side of Kurosaki Masaki. Seeing this, Kensei Rokurume could not help but remind him. Master Senju, be careful, that soul is about to be completely hollowed out. As a former member of the Masked Corps, Kensei Rokurume is well aware of this phenomenon of hollowing. At this stage, Kensei Ngurume thought that there was no possibility of regaining self-awareness, and considering the terrifying spiritual pressure emitted by Masaki Kurosaki, killing her first was the best option. However, Kensei Ngurume's persuasion did not make Makoto Senju hesitate, and he squatted directly beside Masaki Kurosaki, under the nervous and worried gaze of Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki. Makoto Senju's hands emerged with a green light representing the way of Kido, and completely enveloped Masaki Kurosaki. At the same time, green grass emerged from the ground where Masaki Kurosaki was lying. While growing rapidly, in front of Isshin Kurosaki, it was like a thin snake, constantly drilling into Masaki Kurosaki's body from different positions. Many of what Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki saw were illusions created by Aizen Sasuke, but there were also a lot of real parts. Among them, Kurosaki Masaki's hollowification is real, and the degree of Kurosaki Masaki's hollowification is already quite high. Therefore, Makoto Senju, who was suppressing Kurosaki Masaki's further hollowification, frowned unconsciously. You know, Kurosaki Masaki had been invaded by the Hollow-ite in her body, so when she gave birth to Kurosaki Ichigo, a part of Kurosaki Ichigo's constitution would naturally belong to Hollow. And this is just like some things, the first time is raw, the second time is familiar, causing Kurosaki Masaki's hollowification speed to be much faster than the first time. At this time, Aiden Sasuke's voice sounded in Makoto Senju's ears. How is it? Makoto, do you need help? Makoto Senju glanced at Aizen Sasuke from the corner of his eye, and realized that this was undoubtedly a prank by Aizen Sasuke, and without affecting Makoto Senju's original plan, he added a little fun. Otherwise, even if it was not the first time for Kurosaki Masaki, it would not be possible to fail so soon. And Senju Makoto did not answer Aizen. After all, Aizen Sasuke was just a ball of air in the eyes of others at this moment. If Senju Makoto answered, it would undoubtedly be a strange move in the eyes of others. What's more, it was just a change of spirit. As long as Senju Makoto was willing and extreme, it would not be a problem to pinch a biological mother for Kurosaki Ichigo with his bare hands. That is, by then, Kurosaki Ichigo's biological mother had given birth to 3 children, but the new spirit had not yet had any combination with the opposite sex, which made Senju Makoto feel a little weird. As the breaths passed, the green light that enveloped Kurosaki Masaki became more and more intense, and even reflected the green heads of the Kurosaki father and son who were standing next to him and staring at every change of Kurosaki Masaki. However, illuminated by the green light, the Kurosaki father and son could not help but smile with joy and gratitude. Because Kurosaki Masaki's hollowness that had been worsening was curbed. Senju Makoto touched the non-existent sweat on his forehead, took a long breath, and then stood up again and said, Masaki's current hollowing has been temporarily contained, but because the degree of hollowing is quite deep, if she wants to recover to a level similar to that of the masked core, she will need further treatment. Hearing this, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo finally felt relieved, and their eyes looking at Senju Makoto were full of gratitude. Then, Senju Makoto asked the new captain of the 4th Division, Kotetsuya, to send someone to arrange Kurosaki Masaki to the 4th Division's ward. Then, Senju Makoto turned to the other captains who had gathered here and announced that the operation to attack the Hutomunda was cancelled, and he did not put the blame on the Kurosaki family, but instead cancelled the plan because of his own misjudgment and thought that the risk was too great. After these words, the faces of the Kurosaki father and son, who lowered their heads, flushed, but they did not dare to say a word. After the other captains dispersed, the father and son of Kurosaki bowed to Makoto Senju at the same time. I'm sorry, Master Senju. Makoto Senju quickly helped Ishin Kurosaki and Ichigo up and asked in confusion. What are you doing? Ishin, Ichigo. Ishin Kurosaki, who was full of shame, did not even have the courage to look at Makoto Senju in the face at this moment, and said, It was all because of my incompetence that not only put Masaki in danger, but also made Master Senju miss such an important opportunity, and even bear the blame for us. Makoto Senju heard this and replied with a gentle and warm smile on his face. Don't talk nonsense, Ishin, this is obviously my responsibility, and it is obviously me who should apologize to you. Ishin Kurosaki said quickly. No, how can it be? However, before Ishin Kurosaki could speak, Makoto Senju raised his hand to interrupt. I failed to detect and stop the Aransei's attack on Karakura town in time, and even let the Aransei kidnap Masaki and leave. Whether in terms of personal friendship as a friend or as the vice captain of the first team, I bear an unshakable responsibility for this incident. Chapter 753 2 years. Senju Makoto's warm words, like those of a patriarch, and his sincere tone, made Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo feel warm in their hearts, and they hurriedly said, No, this is clearly. However, Senju Makoto still didn't wait for Kurosaki Ishin to finish, and patted Kurosaki Ishin on the shoulder and interrupted. Ishin, I know what you want to say. But whether it is the Seireitei or the Gotti 13, it is completely different from the past. For me as the vice captain of the 1st Squadron, it is my responsibility to protect you. And if I choose to give up Masaki today for the sake of the overall situation, then it will undoubtedly completely break the bottom line that I once adhered to as a doctor, and tomorrow I may give up other lives for other reasons. If I can't even save Masaki, how can I talk about taking on the responsibility of protecting Soul Society? For a moment, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't help but be moved by Senju Makoto's firm and gentle words. This man, really? Kurosaki Ishin tried harder to open his mouth, but tears kept flowing out. For a moment, Kurosaki Ishin felt that the Seireitei and the Goti 13, which he had secretly despised and hated, had really undergone earth-shaking changes. And as a substitute god of death, Kurosaki Ichigo unconsciously developed a strong sense of belonging to the Seireitei and the Goti 13. The feeling of being protected and valued made Kurosaki Ichigo feel at ease after just experiencing a roller coaster ride, and his recognition of Senju Cheng was particularly strong. So, you don't have to think too much, and don't have any psychological burden. All of this is a choice I made based on my own will. Senju Cheng continued to comfort the Kurosaki father and son in a gentle voice, saying, "Besides, Aiden may not have hidden other cards, so I chose not to take the risk and continue the plan, and treat Masaki first." However, although Senju Cheng said so, the Kurosaki father and son knew that it was just the gentleness of the man in front of them, soothing their guilty hearts in this way. But it was precisely because of this that the Kurosaki father and son recognized and appreciated Senju Cheng more and more. Then, after Senju Cheng specially arranged a residence near the 4th Division for the Kurosaki father and son, Ishidori and Chidori Yasutara, so that they could visit Kurosaki Masaki at any time in that 4th Division. Senju Cheng then left in a hurry to deal with the tedious and complicated affairs of the 13th Division of the Goti under the grateful gaze of Kurosaki Ishin and others. And Tenbei Shusuke also appeared beside Senju Cheng openly and said, "The Kurosaki family is really being played around by Makoto-kun." Senju Cheng corrected, "How can this be considered playing? I just want to prevent them from becoming pawns of others in the future, and I can't bear to make some difficult and painful choices at the time, so I decided their camp first." "Ha, Makoto-kun is still as gentle as ever, but do you think that this will completely make them stand on the same side with you?" Aiden Sasuke asked back. "I can't, don't we still have Kurosaki Makoto?" Senju Cheng added meaningfully. Suddenly, Aiden Sasuke smiled, and completely understood why Senju Cheng would go to great lengths to rearrange the character of Kurosaki Makoto to stay in Hukomundo. "Let's go, Aizen-kun, the captain's meeting still has to go through the motions, and continue to discuss how to deal with Aiden Sasuke," Senju Cheng said. "Yes." Then, an emergency captain's meeting was held to deal with the crisis. Many captains spoke freely and provided various highly referenced opinions. Captain General Unohana nodded in approval at the meeting. Finally, under the proposal and support of many captains, in order to be able to respond to crises that may occur at any time, the first team was forced to further centralize power, bypassing the captains of each team and directly interfering with the arrangements and work of the Shinigami of each team. In addition, Captain Unohana also formulated a series of policies to encourage Shinigami training to increase the enthusiasm for training within the Goti 13th Division. After a period of treatment by Makoto Senju, although Kurosaki Masaki has regained self-awareness, due to the pollution caused by the holoization, he was forced to change from a pure-blooded queency to a mixed-blooded queency. However, even so, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but be overjoyed and were extremely grateful for Makoto Senju's attitude. However, now that Kurosaki Masaki has lost most of his power and Kurosaki Ishin has completely lost the power of the Shinigami, they are obviously no longer suitable to return to the world to live. Then, Makoto Senju waved his pen and directly redistributed the Shiba clan's original clan land in the Seireitei to Kurosaki Ishin and his wife, as well as the descendants of the Shiba clan, Shiba Kakaku and his sister. Ichigo Kurosaki watched his parents settling the Seireitei, and he had a strong sense of identity with the Seireitei. In addition, Rukia Kachiki accidentally encountered Ichigo Kurosaki almost every day, which made Ichigo Kurosaki almost think of staying in the Seireitei. However, because his sisters Kari Kurosaki and Yako Kurosaki still needed to be taken care of, Ichigo Kurosaki could only return to the real world. However, before Ichigo Kurosaki left the Seireitei, under Ichigo Kurosaki's strong will and request, Masaki Kurosaki personally guided Ichigo Kurosaki to master the hidden power of the pure-blooded queency. As for the rest, Ichigo Kurosaki needs to ask Ishida for advice, or go to Raijin Ishida for guidance. Compared with the others, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishida are more urgent in their hearts, and they are eager to solve Aizen Sasuke as soon as possible and rescue Makoto Kurosaki, who is still in the Hukomundo. However, what no one expected was that while the Goti 13 Division continued to practice and strengthen its strength, and was always ready for battle, peace lasted for 2 years. Aizen Sasuke, who was regarded as a mortal enemy by the GOTY 13 Division, did not show any signs of attacking the Seireitei except for occasionally sending Seireitei to harass Karakura Town. Even the harassment of Karakura Town did not pose any danger. It was enough to rely on Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida to solve it smoothly, and there was no need to mobilize the GOTY 13 Division's combat power to provide support. On the contrary, the GOTY 13 Division, after 2 years of uninterrupted hard training, has seen a visible increase in the strength of the captains and soldiers, and the momentum they exude is far beyond the past. And in this routine captain meeting, a different voice appeared for the first time. "I propose. Counterattack the Hyuko Mundo and eliminate Aizen Sasuke," Road Guru Makensei said solemnly. Chapter 754. I think it's working again. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the entire captain's meeting room changed, and everyone's eyes subconsciously focused on Kensei Gurume. 2 years. For the long life of the god of death, 2 years passed in the blink of an eye, but 2 years are enough to change many things. In these 2 years, the shadow of the former Captain General Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni almost completely disappeared in the Seireitei, and under the leadership of the current Captain General Unohana Retsu, the spiritual core and system of the entire GOTY 13 divisions have changed greatly. The new spiritual core can be summarized as follows. Each division is united under the leadership of the first division, loyal to the Seireitei, loyal to the GOTY 13 divisions, and loyal to thousands of souls. With the mission of maintaining the Seireitei, carry forward the spirit of hard work, always be ready to fight, and always be ready to fight. As for the specific system of the GOTY 13 divisions, it still maintains 13 different division numbers, but the actual operating logic has undergone a considerable change. For example, at this moment, the captain's meeting is not only attended by 13 captains, but the participants have been expanded to captains and vice-captains. Therefore, behind each captain in the captain's meeting room at this time, there are still their own adjutants standing. On the surface, the implementation of this system is to pool resources and facilitate the transmission of orders and writing between various squads, but in fact it does not weaken the real power of the captains and raise the weight and status of the adjutants. In other words, even if the power of the captains is further dispersed invisibly, more power will be distributed to the adjutants and the chief officers. So that in the current GOTY 13, the captains are gradually becoming closer to the spiritual pillars and combat cores of each squad, but the specific responsibility of managing the squad falls into the hands of each adjutant. While dispersing the power of the captains, a mechanism of mutual supervision and clamping within the squad is also formed, so that the adjutants are no longer completely puppets and subordinates of the captains. Of course, most of the captains did not notice this subtle change, but were happy to see it happen, reducing a lot of tedious team affairs on their hands, and can squeeze out more time for practice. Especially in the past 2 years, the enthusiastic atmosphere of the entire GOTY 13 has been to improve themselves and prepare for battle. Undoubtedly, under this atmosphere, the captains who were under heavy pressure did not have much willingness and energy to deal with team affairs. Road Guru Makensei, who had been practicing for 2 years and felt that he had made great progress, faced the gazes of many people with a confident and solemn look. Captain of Unohana. Lord Senju. Road Guru Makensei threw the captain's Aori and walked out of the team with great momentum. He stood in the center of the captain's meeting room, looking at Unohana Retsu who was standing above with a blank expression and seriousness, and Senju Makutō who closed his eyes and meditated, and said, 2 years. We have been enduring Aizen, the unforgivable man, for 2 years, and the shadow that Aizen brought to the entire Seireitei has also continued to cover for 2 years. Although it is not clear why Aizen has not made any movement for 2 years, the GOTY 13 cannot continue to maintain a defensive posture for just Aizen. Instead of being on guard like this indefinitely, it is better to start trying to take the initiative to eliminate Aizen. As soon as these words came out, many of the Shinigami in the captain's meeting room nodded. It is true that the threat of Aizen Sasuke is almost like an indelible shadow of the GOTY 13, and the fact that many salted fish in the GOTY 13 have been able to practice so hard in the past 2 years is also closely related to the threat of Aizen Sasuke. However, it is obvious that after being stimulated by the same posture for 2 years, even Aizen Sasuke is not very good, so many captains have gradually become immune to this kind of stimulation. In other words, after many captains feel they're in great progress, they can't help but have a feeling of the wind has stopped, the rain has stopped, and I feel that I am good again. Hitsuge Iyashiro, who seems to have grown 2 or 3 centimeters taller in the past 2 years, took the lead and supporting with a cold attitude. Yes, it is indeed about time to deal with Aizen. As Hitsuge Ichiro spoke, Kinpachi Zaraki, Ryukaya Kachaka, and Soinoi Feng also expressed their support for this proposal. However, Jin Ichimura frowned and shook his head and asked, "Everyone, let's not talk about the strength of Aizen Sasuke himself. The important thing is that if we can't find a way to restrain Jinwu Suigetsu, then the number of people in front of Aizen Sasuke will be meaningless. In fact, the biggest possibility for us in front of Aizen Sasuke is killing each other." Just when many Shinigami were frowning for this, Amiib Shusuke, who has become famous for his honesty and gentleness in the GOTY 13, spoke up. "Captain Ichimura's worries are not unreasonable, but in my opinion, I don't think we can stand still because of fear." After a pause, Amiib Shusuke also stepped out with a serious face and spoke to Unohana Retsu and Senju Makoto above. "Captain Unohana, Master Senju, I think it's impossible to find the flaws of Kagami Water Moon by just waiting. The only way to find the flaws of Aizen is to have as much contact with Aizen as possible. Therefore, not fearing the battle is the prerequisite for victory." As soon as these words came out, most of the Shinigami in the captain's meeting room were shocked, and they agreed with what Tenbei Shusuke said. In an instant, the voices of asking for battle, which had been slightly weakened, rang out again in the captain's meeting room. Silence. Suddenly, a faint and gentle voice sounded in the meeting room, but it made the originally noisy sound quiet. Senju Makoto slowly opened his eyes, scanned the Shinigami below, and spoke. "Captains, please pay attention to the meeting discipline." In an instant, many captains who seemed to be eager to rush into the Hukomundo to fight Aizen Sasuke, faced with Senju Makoto's gentle voice, did not have any rebellious psychology at all, and quickly quieted down. If I were to describe it in this way, in the past 2 years, Senju Makoto's attitude towards the Shinigami was still so gentle and warm, but since when, Senju Makoto gradually gained a certain invisible majesty. Even the captains instinctively did not dare to have any thoughts of being rash in front of Senju Makoto. Facing Senju Makoto, the captains seemed to be facing some higher-level existence that naturally had a suppressive power over them. And if someone could observe Senju Makoto up close, they would find that the moment Senju Makoto opened his eyes, the pupils seemed to have turned into several after images for a moment and then merged together. Chapter 755 My Name. Ithwaj. On the contrary, the atmosphere in the captain's meeting room was quiet, but the seemingly serious and calm Unohana Retsu spoke to ease the atmosphere and said, "The proposals of the captains," just then. Dong dong. 2 special sounds rang out at the door of the captain's meeting room, which made the Shinigami in the entire meeting room look towards the door, and their faces became solemn. During the captain's meeting, only if there was an emergency situation would the secret mobile team be eager to report in this way. "Enter," Unohana Retsu said. Then, a figure covered in black appeared in the middle of the captain's meeting room, half knelt down, lowered his head, and said in a hurry, "Report to the Captain-in-Chief, the monitoring shows that the number of hollows in Hukomundo has dropped significantly." As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the Shinigami in the captain's meeting room were all frozen. Hukomundo. That is the base camp of Aizen Sasuke. The number of people in Hukomundo has dropped significantly, which is likely that Aizen Sasuke has made some big moves. Even Senju Makoto gave Aizen Sasuke a subtle look. However, Aizen Sasuke shook his head, indicating that he did not do it. In fact, unlike what the GOTY 13 imagined, Aizen Sasuke was preparing for war, accumulating strength to prepare for revenge on the Seireitei, and brewing the next attack on the Soul King Palace. Aizen Sasuke had a completely laissez-faire attitude towards Hukomundo, and even the 10 Espadas had no interest in replenishing them. With the ability of Mirror Flower and Water Moon, he maintained himself outside the Hukomundo in the eyes of the remaining 10 Espadas, and in fact, the entire Hukomundo was handed over to the Aranses for self-government. The next moment, Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke thought of a possibility at the same time. Could it be Ithwaj? Originally, in the calculations of Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke, they had already begun to approach the time node predicted by Ithwaj. Therefore, Makoto Senju deliberately began to indulge the momentum of the GOTY 13 division to counterattack Hukomundo, in order to make all members of the GOTY 13 division ready for battle at any time. As for the changes in Hukomundo, the captains naturally paid great attention to it because they subconsciously believed that it was related to Aizen Sasuke. However, due to the limited intelligence, most of the Shinigami only believed that it was related to Aizen Sasuke's creation of Aransei. Therefore, the result of the captains' meeting was On the one hand, it was proposed that the Seireitei strengthen its defensor, and on the other hand, the secret mobile team and the Intelligence Division were sent to cooperate with the Technology Development Bureau to further explore Hukomundo. After the captain's meeting, Makoto Senju and Days and Sasuke almost rushed to Hukomundo in person without stopping. At the same time, a fierce battle has already broken out in the Hukomundo Palace, and even in a very short time, half of the Hukomundo Palace has completely collapsed. Stark, Ulkira, Hannibal, Nell, and Grimjow, who evolved into Vasthound in 2 years, the only 5 remaining Arances among the Espada, all returned to Ragnarok. The 5 Vasthound level Arances returned to Ragnarok at the same time, and the terrifying spiritual pressure almost made all the Hollows who could see the Koronoa Palace tremble. In addition, there were many subordinate officers leading the Hollows of Uchikase and Killian under the Espada to face the enemy head-on. With such a scale, even if it is not as powerful as the Espada led by Aizen Sasuke himself, the gap is not much, and it is even a terrifying combat power that is enough to impact the Seireitei. However, the situation on the battlefield is almost one-sided. Whether it is the Hollows led by the subordinate officers or the 5 Vasthound level Arances, they are almost all suppressed by the sudden attack of the enemy. It is a special organization with all members wearing long white hooded cloaks with stars and crosses on the back. Even the soldiers of these organizations have extremely high combat capabilities of absorbing spirit particles. Among them, those who were obviously the superiors, in addition to absorbing spirit particles, have their own special abilities. Each of them has a spiritual pressure that is not inferior to that of the captain-level Shinigami. More importantly, the number. These mysterious organizations that suddenly appeared seem to have a good understanding of the main combat power inside the Gynecology Palace. Almost every 10 Espadas was besieged by more than 2 enemies at the same time. Boom. At the entrance of the Gynecology Palace, which was mostly turned into ruins in a very short time, in a pure white environment, a middle-aged man with long black hair and beard, wearing a black cloak, seemed to be strolling in his own empire, stepping into the ruins of the Gynecology Palace step by step. Such a conspicuous character, and the middle-aged man was obviously guarded by several people emitting extremely strong spiritual pressure. His status is self-evident. Hannibal, who could only watch the Gynecology Palace being destroyed at a very fast speed, let out an unwilling low roar. Damn it. Compared to the other 10 blades who also completely ignored the matter, Hannibal was actually the steward of the entire Gyn Palace in the past 2 years, working hard to maintain the normal operation of Gyn Palace. How could Hannibal not be angry at this sudden scene? More importantly, as his side continued to retreat, the only possibility for Hannibal to reverse the situation was, the next moment, Hannibal almost 360 degrees without dead angles burst out with a burning sea current with extremely terrifying temperature, forcing the 2 guys who besieged him to subconsciously distance themselves. Then, Hannibal was like a swimming fish, using the cover of the water flow to escape from the opponent's encirclement, and his target was directly aimed at the middle-aged man in a black cloak who was obviously dressed as a leader. As long as we can capture the opponent, or kill the opponent, the situation can be reversed. Hannibal's spiritual pressure completely broke out, showing a more terrifying strength than 2 years ago, and the giant sword in his hand pointed directly in the direction of the middle-aged man. Broken waterfall. When Hannibal was about 20 meters away from the middle-aged man, the blade of the giant sword in his hand was like the pattern of sharp gills, and a terrifying water flow comparable to a tsunami almost gushed out of thin air, bringing the middle-aged man and the guards behind him into the attack range. Facing the attack that was like a natural disaster, the guards behind the middle-aged man had no intention of moving at all until the water flowed in front of the middle-aged man. At some point, the middle-aged man had an extinction cross knife in his hand, and then he casually slashed at the broken waterfall in front of him. Boom. The broken waterfall that was enough to flatten the mountain was actually cut off. This scene also made Hannibal, who originally wanted to attack and hijack the middle-aged man after the broken waterfall, shrink her pupils and instinctively said, "How is it possible?" However, before Hannibal could react, the middle-aged man appeared in front of her almost like teleportation, stepped on Hannibal's abdomen, and directly stepped on Hannibal to the ground. "My name is Yuthwatch, a humble hollow, tell me where Aizen Sasuke is." Chapter 756. Alliance. Yuthwatch's personal attack caused the entire battlefield to fall into a brief silence, and many members of the stern-crossed knights who were besieging the Yarensei stopped their attacks. The faces of the Yarensei such as Stark, Ulkira, and Nell were particularly ugly. However, facing Yuthwatch's questioning, Hannibal showed a look of disdain on his face and asked back, Do you think I would betray my companions? Yuach asked somewhat unexpectedly. Interesting. As an Seireitei, you actually compare the god of death to your companions? In response, Haribal simply responded with a silent attitude and did not respond to Yuach's words. After the war 2 years ago, Makoto Senju secretly sent Nell back to Hukomundo and had corresponding exchanges with Haribal and Grimjow. Makoto Senju naturally would not reveal too many secrets to Haribal and Grimjow, and only explained that he was faking his death and lurking in Soul Society under the identity of Ashwarakatenri. He also declared that he had formed an alliance with Aizen Sosok, so that Haribal, Nell and Grimjow could stay in the Kuraya Palace with peace of mind. This was enough for Haribal and other Seireitei to know how to choose their side. Therefore, even if Aizen Sosok had no interest in managing the Kuraya Palace, Haribal still dutifully maintained the normal operation of the Kuraya Palace. In addition, Senju Makoto killed Bilejum last time, and no Seireitei among the 10 Espadas would be interested in competing with Haribal for power. Therefore, even if Haribal still had no good feelings for Aizen Sosok, but knowing that Aizen Sosok was in the same camp as himself, Haribal, who adhered to the spirit of sacrifice, would never betray Aizen Sosok. Don't you want to say it? Yuha said, and raised the Queen's crossblade in his hand directly, pointing it at Haribal under his feet, and said, "That doesn't matter. As long as we kill all of you Seireitei, Aizen Sosok will show up." The next moment, the cross of extinction stabbed straight at Haribal's head, super acceleration. Swoosh. Nell, who had returned to the second stage of the blade, showed an amazing speed. She almost instantly crossed a very long distance and appeared in front of Yuach. The knight's lance in her hand blocked Haribal in time. Boom. The collision between the cross of extinction and the knight's lance instantly stirred up a large storm that spread around. However, as Nell felt the amazing power from the knight's lance, her expression could not help but change. The lower body of the antelope transformed by the blade returned to the front legs and half knelt down. How can this guy be so strong? Nell's eyes flashed with solemnity, but she rushed towards Haribal without slowing down, trying to forcibly rescue Haribal first. Seeing this, Haribal said anxiously, "Idiot, go away, leave me alone." However, facing Haribal's scolding, Nell still did not hesitate at all, and once again activated her unique super acceleration ability. However, Yuach's eyes, which seemed to be without any emotion, seemed to see through Nell's movement trajectory. Seeing that Nell was about to touch Haribal, and even a hint of joy appeared on her face subconsciously, the crossblade of extinction suddenly appeared in front of Nell, and it seemed that Nell took the initiative to crash into the crossblade of extinction. At this moment, the 81st binding path, cutting the sky, an invisible barrier blocked the crossblade of extinction and Nell, and while separating the crossblade of extinction, Nell, who could not stop the inertia, also crashed into it. Bang! Under the huge inertia brought by super acceleration, Nell's collision almost made Nell herself see stars, and looked a little dizzy. However, this made Haribal breathe a sigh of relief. If Nell had hit the blade of the Queen's cross, even if she would not die, the mask that had just been repaired would have had another hole. However, except for Haribal, no one paid attention to Nell at this moment. Everyone's eyes were on the man who seemed to have suddenly appeared in the center of the battlefield, Aizen Sosok. Aizen Sosok looked around at the many members of the stern-crossed knights who exuded spiritual pressure that was no less than that of the captain, and spoke calmly. "What an unpleasant guest, Yuha. Oh, you know me?" Yuha said with interest, even ignoring Haribal under his feet and Nell beside him, and walked to 5 meters in front of Aizen Sosok. The loser from 1,000 years ago, the king of the Queen's hiding in the shadows. Aizen Sosok stated calmly. Upon hearing this, Yuha did not get angry, but instead spread his hands slightly towards Aizen Sosok and said, "Interesting, Aizen Sosok, you have proved your worth and ability." After a pause, Yuha spoke in a tone that could not be refused. "Then, how about forming an alliance with me? Our goal is to destroy the Seireitei, and there is no harm in forming an alliance with the same goal." Aizen Sosok was silent for a moment and said, "If I don't agree, then do you plan to destroy the Kuraya Palace before attacking the Seireitei? What do you think, Aizen?" Yuha asked back. "I say," Aizen Sosok's eyes condensed, but the next moment he disappeared from the spot and appeared beside Yuha. Kyokushuyu slashed at Yuach's body like a crescent moon and said, "You'll die here," and dang! The cross-sword of extinction blocked in front of Kyokushuyu in time, and the sharp collision sound echoed throughout the Kuraya Palace. and Yuhwa's arrogant expression, which had always been like the arrival of a king, also changed, and he showed obvious anger, saying, "You are looking for death, Aiden Sosok." However, Aiden Sosok's actions did not hesitate at all, and the mirror flower in his hand turned into countless after images and slashed at different vital points on Yuhwa's body. For a time, the amazing Yuhwa was forced to retreat step by step by Aiden Sosok, and could only barely resist Aiden Sosok's attack, and his posture became more and more embarrassed. Until Yuhwa could no longer maintain his expression, and said angrily, "Aizen, you will pay the price." But, the next moment, the mirror flower in Aiden Sosok's hand directly broke the cross sword of extinction, and the blade pointed directly at Yuhwa's neck, and the arrogant voice sounded at the same time. "You want to form an alliance with me, but you only send an ant pretending to be Yuhwa to show off his fangs in front of me. How ridiculous." Chapter 757 5 Special Combat Powers. However, just when Jing Wushui was about to cut open the throat of Yuhwa, a pure white sword blocked the front. Ding! A violent collision exploded, and Yuhwa was even blown away by the aftermath of the collision. The sword that blocked Jing Wushui did not move at all in the slightly surprised eyes of Aiden Sosok. Aiden Sosok turned his eyes and looked at the blonde man holding the pure white sword. Long golden hair, blue eyes, delicate features, cold and calm eyes, and the whole person exuded a noble and elegant Western aristocratic temperament from the inside out. And the blonde man gracefully retracted the sword that blocked Jing Wushui and said calmly, "I'm sorry to make you laugh, Mr. Aizen. I'm Yuglan Haskvald, the leader of the Stern-Crossed Knights." "Oh?" Aiden Sosok's eyes flashed with a hint of interest and glanced at Haskvald. Although Haskvald did not deliberately burst out his spiritual pressure, the invisible pressure was enough to prove that he was not on the same level as the other Stern-Crossed Knights. Then, Haskvald asked with a hint of curiosity in his tone, "As expected of Lord Aizen, I wonder how you knew that this was not the real Majesty." "Your Majesty." "Yuhwa?" Aiden Sosok replied. "No need to know, just use common sense to judge. If the rumored king of the Queen's is only this level, then kill him, and that's it." As soon as these words full of disdain and arrogance came out, Haskvald's expression did not change at all, and the faces of the surrounding Stern-Crossed Knights almost all showed obvious anger. Yuhwa was even more furious and scolded. "Aizen, please watch your words and don't be rude to His Majesty." "Shut up, Lloyd." Haskvald scolded in a low voice, but it made Yuhwa's eyes flash with fear. Then, the surface of Yuhwa's bark blurred for a moment, but it turned into a bald man with an eye on his forehead, who answered respectfully, "Yes, Lord Haskvald." Aiden Sosok looked at Lloyd with interest and commented, "Interesting ability." Haskvald said after hearing this. "Lloyd's holy word is Y, which means yourself. It may perfectly imitate the target's appearance, spiritual pressure, skills, etc." "Perfect?" Aiden Sosok repeated, but there was a hint of playfulness in his words. Haskvald, who reacted immediately, couldn't help but look a little unhappy, realizing that he had been tricked by Aiden Sosok. Since Lloyd's ability is to perfectly imitate the target's power, it also indirectly shows that the power of Yuhwa bark is only to this extent now. Perhaps, Haskvald could also explain the flaws of the ability yourself in detail, but this would not only make things worse, but would also belittle that problem of the power bestowed by Yuhwa from another perspective. As expected of the special combat power specially divided by His Majesty, no matter which aspect it is, it cannot be underestimated in the slightest. Haskvald said. "Special combat power?" After a pause, Aiden Sosok asked with interest. "From your tone, it seems that there is more than one special combat power. I'm a little curious about who is qualified to be on par with me." Haskvald did not mean to hide it, and spoke. "There are a total of 5 special combat powers. In addition to Lord Aizen, who represents Ratsu, there are also Ichigo Kurosaki, who represents potential, Kinpachi Zaraki, who represents combat power, the captain of the 0 Division, who represents wisdom, and Makoto Senju, who represents unknown." Aiden Sosok nodded and said, "It's just a stretch. It's undeniable that some of it is correct, but there are also many mistakes." Haskvald did not get angry at the contempt that Aiden Sosok showed for Yuhwa in his words, but continued to speak. "Compared to the other 4 special combat forces, the one that your Majesty values most and thinks is worthy of an alliance is Lord Aizen, and it is undeniable that Lord Aizen is in line with our position of wanting to destroy the Seireitei." After a pause, Haskvald did not forget to explain. Of course, it's not that your majesty doesn't want to invite Lord Aizen in person, but your majesty's strength has not yet fully recovered, so he deliberately asked Lloyd to represent your majesty's image, and I came to invite Lord Aizen on behalf of your majesty's will. These words, neither humble nor arrogant, made Aizen Sosok look at Haskvath more seriously. Facing Aizen Sosok's gaze, Haskvath looked back and asked, I wonder what Lord Aizen thinks. As soon as these words came out, the scene became tense again. Many members of the Stern-Crossed Knights were secretly preparing for battle. The invisible pressure emanating from the combined forces of many Stern-Crossed Knights made the Yaranses like Stark feel depressed. Even the Yaranses like Stark understood that this was an invisible threat. The meaning conveyed by Ithwatch was quite clear. Acceptance means alliance, and refusal means war. Before attacking Soul Society, troublemakers like the Hanami Palace that may affect the situation are not allowed to exist. Aizen Sosok raised his eyes slightly, and a hint of arrogant and indifferent smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he replied, I refuse. The scene seemed to fall into silence for a moment. Many members of the Stern-Crossed Knights looked at Aizen Sosok, who was surrounded in the middle, and their eyes were burning with anger. Rejecting the invitation from His Majesty again and again. This behavior, in the eyes of the Stern-Crossed Knights who regarded Ithwatch as God, was a heretic who must be killed and an unforgivable evil. Just when some members of the Stern-Crossed Knights could not hold back and were ready to attack Aizen Sosok directly, Haskvath raised his palm high and glanced at them coldly. Those members of the Stern-Crossed Knights who were overwhelmed by anger seemed to have a basin of cold water poured down from top to bottom, and they stopped instantly. Then, Haskvath looked at Aizen Sosok and asked, Since Lord Aizen still believes that I am not qualified to have an equal dialogue with you, Lord Aizen, how about waiting for a while and then meeting with His Majesty and Soul Society to discuss the alliance? Aizen Sosok glanced at Haskvath and said, Since Yubark has a subordinate of your caliber, it seems that he is worthy of attention. Then, as you said, let Yubark meet me in Soul Society. Thank you for the compliment, Lord Aizen, and I'm sorry to bother you this time. Haskvath bowed slightly and said, then took a few steps back before turning around and leading the Stern-Crossed Knights away. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 758 Invisible Empire. Soon, when the Stern-Crossed Knights led by Haskvath left the Kikya Palace for a certain distance, their spiritual pressure disappeared instantly. It was not until this moment that the Yaranses completely relaxed. Although some Yaranses were unwilling to admit it, the combat power shown by the Stern-Crossed Knights was far superior to the current Kikya Palace. If Aizen Sosok had not shown up, the superficial test would have directly turned into a siege, and I am afraid that the entire Kikya Palace might really be annihilated. Of course, there are also Yaranses like Grimjow who love war and belligerence, and at this moment, their faces show reluctance and indignation. In a one-on-one situation, Grimjow never thought that he would lose to those bastards. It's just that the Stern-Crossed Knights launched a surprise attack on the Kikya Palace, and each of the 10 Espadas who appeared was perceived by more than 2 members of the Stern-Crossed Knights. More importantly, information. The Stern-Crossed Knights seemed to have a good understanding of that 10 Espada's abilities, but the 10 Espadas knew nothing about these surprise attacks. Damn it. If I meet those bastards next time, I will tear them all to pieces. Grimjow gritted his teeth and said. Aizen Sosok ignored the reactions of his subordinates and just walked up to Nell and asked, Nell, are you okay? Nell was stunned and didn't react to Aizen Sosok's concern for a while. It was not until Harible bumped Nell with his elbow that Nell came to her senses and spoke quickly. Yes, I'm fine, Lord Aizen. Yeah. Aizen Sosok nodded, turned to look at the half-collapsed Kikya Palace, and said in a gentler tone. The subsequent repairs of Kikya Palace will be left to you. Just do a good job of guarding, and don't worry about the rest. Yes. Nell responded subconsciously in a daze. Then, Aizen Sosok disappeared from everyone's sight like a wave, as if Aizen Sosok himself was an illusion. In the night sky above the Palace of the Night, beside Senju Cheng, whose figure was hidden by the ghost barrier, Aizen Sosok's figure emerged and spoke. Cheng, what do you think? Yubark is confirming the unstable factors before the war begins. After a pause, Senju Cheng continued. But it seems that our guess time is correct. Yubark's power is almost fully restored. Aiden Sosok heard this, but his expression revealed a hint of disappointment and said, "If the power of Yhwach imitated by the ability of yourself is very close to the real level, then I'm afraid Yhwach will disappoint Makao, and he is not even qualified to be a chess piece." In this regard, Senju Makao's thoughts are undoubtedly somewhat similar to Aiden Sosok. It is true that the level of combat power displayed by Lloyd's incarnation, Yhwach, can crush Arances of the level of Vastod and captains of the level of Kinpachi's Araki. However, if it is only of this level, let alone being comparable to Makao Senju and Sosok Aizen, there is a clear gap even compared to Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni of Bankai. With this level of combat power, it is impossible to expect Yhwach to challenge Hyoshogu Ichibei head-on. What is the difference between this and letting a graduate of the Mao Academy of Spiritual Arts this year lurk in the palace of Kaienyaku to assassinate Sosok Aizen? However, compared to Sosok Aizen's suspicion of Yhwach based on intelligence, Makao Senju, based on the little memory he learned in his previous life, understands that the threat level of Yhwach should not be underestimated. Even though Yhwach was chopped down by Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni 1,000 years ago, Yhwach at this stage will never let himself down. Don't worry, Aizen-kun, please have a little more trust in your enemies. Rather than doubting whether Yhwach's strength will disappoint us, I'm a little worried about who spread the prophecy in Ode to the King of Quincy's. If these prophecies were all issued by Yhwach and verified one by one, then Yhwach undoubtedly has the ability to predict the future, which is quite tricky. At the end, Senju Makao frowned slightly. After all, facing this kind of ability, it is almost like showing your cards to the opponent, which is quite disadvantageous for Senju Makao's plan. However, no matter what ability, there will be an upper limit based on itself. Even Senju Makao, who controls the name of the Spirit Sun, cannot reconstruct or destroy Soul Society and Hukomundo in a single thought. However, Aiden Sosok's understanding is undoubtedly somewhat unique, and he teased, "Even if it is the ability to predict the future, is it only tricky for Makao-kun? Aizen-kun is exaggerating. I never look down on anyone." Senju Makao replied. In response, Aiden Sosok couldn't help but smile. Perhaps, Senju Makao's attitude is still so gentle and humble, but that sentence that seems to look down on no one, invisibly reveals an attitude of not looking up to anyone. Of course, Aiden Sosok does not think this is arrogance, but the humility and gentleness unique to Makao. He did not compare those young lives to ants. It was so gentle. Then, Senju Makao opened the black cavity passage and entered it through the spiritual control method. "Let's go, Aizen-kun. Since Yhwach has awakened, then we should also prepare well and pave the way for Aizen-kun to gain Yhwach's trust." Aiden Sosok followed into the black cavity and said, "Makao-kun, don't you worry about the risk of me being discovered by Yhwach." Senju Makao said with a bit of ridicule. "In that case, shouldn't we worry about the Stern-Crossed Knights? They don't want decent cooperation, Aizen-kun will let them be decent, right?" At the same time, in the invisible empire hidden in the shadow of the Seireitei, Haskvald led the Stern-Crossed Knights into a hall. Then, all the members of the Stern-Crossed Knights, whose spiritual pressure was at the captain level, knelt on one knee and saluted the throne in front of them. On the throne was a middle-aged man who looked exactly like the one Lloyd imitated, Yhwach. However, unlike the Yhwach that Lloyd imitated, the majesty and oppression emanating from Yhwach sitting on the throne at this moment far exceeded that of the fake. Until this moment, Yhwach slowly opened his eyes, and scanned the members of the Stern-Crossed Knights below his eyes without a trace of emotion, and asked, "How is it? Haskvald, have you seen Aizen Sosok?" Chapter 759. Hymns and Prophecies. Haskvald, who was at the front, heard the words and described the details without any emotion. Finally, Haskvald made his own judgment and said, "I think the conflict and contradiction between Aizen Sosok and the Seireitei may be irreconcilable, but the possibility of him being willing to submit to your majesty is extremely low." "That kind of thing doesn't matter," Yhwach said with a kind of indifference in his voice. As one of the special combat forces, even if Aizen Sosok stands on the opposite side, it will only be a little troublesome. The greatest value of winning him over is that his zanpakutō ability has a special effect against the Gotti 13. "Yes, your majesty," Haskvald responded. "Hstwald, go down and prepare. In the name of the Invisible Empire, declare war on the Gotti 13 and officially announce our return." Yhwach said. "Yes," Haskvald replied. Then, Yhwach said with a trace of fluctuation and fear in his voice, Also, Senju Cheng, who represents the unknown among the 5 special forces, should be dealt with first, and his Bankai and Royal Seal should be brought back. Haskvalth nodded and responded. Yes. As the person whose status in the Invisible Empire is now second only to Emperor Youthwatch, Haskvalth, the leader of the Stern-Crossed Knights, knows very well that the most dangerous person among the 5 special forces is Senju Cheng. The reason why Senju Cheng is marked as unknown is that the combat power displayed by Senju Cheng is far beyond the estimation, and even the existence of this character is not at all in the estimation evoked to the King of the Queency. And with the terrifying Bankai displayed by Senju Cheng that directly crushed Aizen Sosok, if it is not restricted, I'm afraid that the entire Invisible Empire may be swept away by him. However, in contrast, this kind of combat power that relies entirely on Bankai is also the easiest to deal with in Haskvalth's eyes. Because the Stern-Crossed Knights created something called Star Chapter during the 1,000 years of lurking in the shadows, which can forcibly seize the Bankai of the God of Death. As long as the Bankai of Makautau Senju is seized, then the Bankai that makes His Majesty afraid can become the strongest weapon to destroy the Seireitei. When Makautau Senju and Aizen Sosok quietly returned to the Seireitei, the 13th Division of the Gotti had already entered a state of defense, and each division was operating in its own way. As for the abnormal situation in Nahuko Mundo, it was mainly jointly investigated by the 2nd Division, the 7th Division, and the 12th Division. However, even if Aizen Sosok appeared in time and prevented the Stern-Crossed Knights from slaughtering and destroying the Huto Mound, the loss of the entire Huto Mound was still quite amazing. In particular, the death of a large number of large hollows has reached the point where it has begun to affect the imbalance of souls. Therefore, not long after Makautau Senju returned to the 1st Division, Mayuri Kuroko took the initiative to ask for a meeting. "Sir Senju, Captain Kurosachi Mayuri is here to visit." Nikureon Mu, who now goes by the alias Nu and serves as the 3rd seat of the 1st Division, but actually handles a lot of affairs for Senju Makautau on a daily basis, reported to him. Senju Makautau nodded and said, "Let him in." When Kurosachi Mayuri came in, his eyes subconsciously lingered on Nikureon Mu for a moment, and then he walked over to sit in front of Senju Makautau. Senju Makautau calmly made tea for Kurosachi Mayuri, and then asked, "Captain Kurosachi Mayuri, you are here in a hurry. Is there something urgent?" "There are signs of soul imbalance between Huko Mundo, Soul Society, and reality," Kurosachi Mayuri briefly stated, as if asking for opinions. This was incomprehensible in the Gotti 13 during the period of Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni, a strange scene where a captain would ask for the vice-captain's opinion. Neither Kurosachi Mayuri nor Nikureon Mu felt that it was unreasonable at all. In the current Gotti 13, it is true that Unohana Retsu was the captain general, but in fact, every captain can feel that the one who really holds the real power is Makautau Senju. Unohana Retsu is more like a mascot. Every day, he enjoys flowers and tea, or goes to the Kendo Hall to teach the 4th squad about Kendo and Kido. The actual affairs of the entire Seireitei are basically handled and coordinated by Makautau Senju. Even if there are some issues that need to be handled by the Captain General, they will basically go through Makautau Senju first. And the other squads are gradually being fully responsible for various team affairs by the vice-captains, which is also a trend that Makautau Senju personally demonstrated and passed on. Coupled with Makautau Senju's amazing prestige and combat power, this also makes Makautau Senju truly the second to none in the Seireitei. Of course, even in front of Unohana Retsu, Makautau Senju is often above one person. However, outsiders have no idea about these things, but secretly often admire the harmonious and trusting master-disciple relationship between Unohana Retsu and Makautau Senju. A large number of Shinigami even believe that the trust and support between Unohana Retsu and Senju Makautau is even an important cornerstone for the stable development of the current Gotti 13. Senju Makautau listened to Kurosachi Mayuri's question and asked back. "So, what does Captain Kurosachi Mayuri mean?" "Clean up a part of the Rukonge area." Kurosachi Mayuri said this calmly, which made Senju Makautau's eyebrows jump slightly. You should know that what Kurosachi Mayuri said about cleaning up a part of the Rukonge area is not to clean up, but to directly wipe out the residents of Rukonge by one area at a time to restore the balance of souls. At any time, that means the death of tens of thousands of Rukonge residents. Of course, this does not mean that Kurosachi Mayuri's approach is wrong. Between sacrificing tens of thousands of Rukonge residents and the serious consequences of soul imbalance, the former loss is undoubtedly more acceptable. However, Kurosachi Mayuri was able to say this proposal so calmly, which was undoubtedly frighteningly rational. Senju Makoto looked at Kurosaki Mairi deeply and rejected Kurosaki Mairi's suggestion with a brief and direct answer. No, there's no need for that. Why? If we ignore it, based on the current situation, the imbalance of souls will only get worse. Kurosaki Mairi asked back. A few days won't be a problem. Senju Makoto answered calmly. Upon hearing this, Kurosaki Mairi was stunned at first, then he thought of something, and his creepy eyes widened and said, I see, Kurosaki Mairi laughed sharply and pervertedly, and said, Senju-sama, I didn't expect you to be more ruthless than me. You also noticed the abnormality in Hukomundo, and it is very likely related to the Stern-Crossed Knights 1,000 years ago. And you concluded that the Stern-Crossed Knights would definitely attack the Seireitei, and are prepared to balance the souls of Hukomundo and Seireitei at the cost of the Shinigami who died in the GOTY 13. Chapter 760. The Invasion of the Star-Crossed Knights. Senju Makoto did not answer immediately, but stared at the tea leaves slowly rotating in the teacup in front of him with a distant look. The rotation of the tea leaves is never the choice of the tea leaves, but the choice of the water flow, Senju Makoto said calmly. Since Captain Kurosaki Mairi is also aware of the Stern-Crossed Knights 1,000 years ago, then he should understand that if the enemy is them, war cannot be avoided by retreating. If you don't even have the awareness of making sacrifices, the war will inevitably only result in defeat. The exaggerated expression on Kurosaki Mairi's face was slightly restrained, and there was a hint of dissatisfaction in his tone. Isn't this what the old man Yamamoto left behind 1,000 years ago? Be careful, Captain Kurosaki Mairi. Senju Makoto interrupted Kurosaki Mairi before he finished speaking. Each generation has its own mission. Captain General Yamamoto's contributions to the GOTY 13 and the Seireitei are beyond doubt, so there is no need to say more about that. TSK Kurosaki Mairi made a voice that was not convinced. However, when Mayuri Kurosaki saw Senju Makoto sweeping over with a somewhat scrutinizing look, he quickly added, Master Senju, I have nothing against you. Your tactics are naturally more decisive and ruthless than old man Yamamoto. Instantly, Senju Makoto's eyes looking at Mayuri Kurosaki became more sharp, forcing Mayuri Kurosaki to swallow the rest of his words. As one of the few captains in the GOTY 13 who knew that Kurosaki Makoto and Senju Makoto were the same person, Mayuri Kurosaki knew very well that the man in front of him was not as gentle and harmless as outsiders saw him. As a bystander, Mayuri Kurosaki could see clearly how the entire Seireitei fell into the hands of this man, and he also understood how amazing this man's tactics were. However, Mayuri Kurosaki had no dissatisfaction in his heart, and was even a little happy to see it happen. After all, following Senju Makoto, he had much more research resources and funds than when he was with old man Yamamoto. Soul Society, Hukomundo, the real world, it can be said that as long as it is research material that Kurosaki Mairi wants, there is nothing that Senju Makoto cannot provide. Compared with the past when he had to collect some prohibited research materials secretly, it is more than a little more comfortable. Captain Kurosaki Mairi, do what you should do, and I hope that the Technology Development Bureau will make all kinds of preparations to welcome the war. Senju Makoto said, half reminding and half warning. Wow, it's just right for Senju-sama to see the achievements of the Technology Development Bureau in the past 2 years, Kurosaki Mairi said with some confidence. Then, Senju Makoto discussed with Kurosaki Mairi the focus of the Technology Development Bureau in the future, and asked the Technology Development Bureau to start transferring some important technical personnel, research results, research instruments, etc. Unlike Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's rather old-fashioned thinking, Senju Makoto still has a different emphasis on scientific research, and understands that the Technology Development Bureau with full support will definitely play an unexpected role in the war. Therefore, even if the Seireitei had to become a battlefield again and the other squats' houses could be destroyed, the Technical Development Bureau must not fall. Kurosaki Mairi was almost comfortable with the importance attached to Makoto Senju, and was ready to leave the 1st Division. In fact, Kurosaki Mairi was a little excited by Makoto Senju, and was ready to play an irreplaceable role in the next war. In this way, he could prove to Makoto Senju that the investment and support for the Technical Development Bureau in the past 2 years was worthwhile, and by the way, he could strive for greater research support after the war. However, just as Kurosaki Mairi walked to the gate of the 1st Division, he suddenly sensed that there were several strange spiritual pressures in the 1st Division. In addition, an explosion suddenly occurred in the area where Makoto Senju usually worked. Boom. Kurosaki Mairi's eyes changed on the spot, and the whole person rushed towards the direction of Makoto Senju as if he was about to explode. In Kurosaki Mayuri's eyes, anyone in the entire Gotti 13th Division could die, but Makatao Senju must not die. Apart from Senju Makatao, throughout the tens of millions of years of history of Soul Society, there is no other god of death who supports great scientific research so much. For a moment, Kurosaki Mayuri's expression was almost uglier than his own father's death, and he returned to the office area of the 1st Squadron's adjutant in almost an instant. At this moment, in the collapsed house, in addition to Senju Makatao, there were 2 more uninvited guests. One had dark skin, was thin and tall, tied with 5 upright braids, wore a yellow helmet and a thick belt covering his forehead and eyes, black and white teeth, thick lips, and rings on both hands, looking both wretched and dirty. One had a thick beard, rough facial features, a chain around his waist, and an unusually burly figure. In contrast, in addition to Naomi falling in the collapsed house, seemingly life or death unknown, Senju Makatao's body was covered with layers of grit-like spirit particles, and his face was quite ugly. The 2 uninvited guests only glanced at Meguri Kurosachi's arrival, and then turned their attention back to Makatao Senju. Among them, the dirty man showed his ugly teeth and said, "Don't waste your time, Vice Captain Makatao Senju, my holy word is Unananayikup, and my ability is no guard. As long as the object is interfered with by my ability, I can analyze the distribution and flow of the opponent's spiritual pressure through the grid spirit particles, and use the morphine mode to overflow the spirit particles of the opponent's spiritual pressure loopholes, thereby completely paralyzing the spirit body, so surrender and die." At this moment, Nayikup put his hands in his pockets and raised his head slightly. He felt that Makatao Senju, who was highly valued by Captain Haswad, was just like this. And even Makatao Senju, the strongest combat power in the 13th Gotti squad, is only of this level. Is there any opponent in the Seireitei? However, before Nayikup finished posing, he could enjoy the horrified eyes of Makatao Senju when his body was paralyzed. Another burly man had already rushed towards Senju Makatao and shouted, "Stop talking nonsense, Nayikup, I can't wait to make this guy a part of my power. I'm the Holy Cross Knight Odorisk Belshi. My ability is mass killing. The more living beings I kill and the stronger they are, the stronger my power will be. So, the god of death named Senju Makatao, become a sacrifice for my power." Belshi shouted excitedly, and the burly body that was almost 2 people tall jumped high in front of Senju Makatao, and the fist as big as a casserole covered with light slammed down on the top of Senju Makatao's head. From a distance, the momentum was like a tiger pouncing on a harmless little white rabbit. Chapter 761. True Forest Buddha. Chapter 761. True Warrior Buddha. After learning that the mission this time was to sneak attack Senju Makatao, one of the 5 special combat forces, Belshi took the initiative to ask for this mission. He is the strongest person in the Gotti 13, and even His Majesty is afraid of him. Based on the ability of mass killing, Belshi knew that if he killed this guy personally, the power increase he could get would be so great that he could even compete with Haskvag for the position of leader of the Stern Cross Knights. At this moment, Belshi's eyes were filled with excitement and brutality. He almost used up all his strength to blast Senju Makatao, who was paralyzed by the unprepared ability and completely unable to move. For a moment, Belshi seemed to have vaguely seen Senju Makatao's head explode like a watermelon. However, in front of Belshi, there was suddenly a figure. It was Meguri Kurosachi, who was wearing the captain's Aori, and his zanpakutō was blocked in front of his fist. Boom. The collision of fist and zanpakutō, the collision of the 2 sides almost double size. More importantly, Belshi had just participated in the raid on the Palace of the Night and slaughtered a large number of hollows. This made Belshi's combat power soar to a very terrifying level, otherwise Haswad would not have sent Belshi to attack Senju Makatao. The next moment, Kurosachi Mayuri, who was not good at close combat and spiritual strength, had almost half of his body blown to pieces, and the whole person was blown to the side like a rag. Seeing this, Belshi had a deep understanding of his own strength and spoke arrogantly. So the so-called captain is only this level? He is really weak and vulnerable, or is it that our invisible empire is too powerful? After witnessing the whole process that seemed to deliberately provoke him, Senju Makatao's face also showed anger. This also made Nayikup and Belshi's eyes secretly show a hint of joy. Senju Makatao once displayed a Bankai that seemed to be able to destroy the Seireitei with one strike. It was too strong. It was so strong that even the Knights of the Holy Cross could hardly help but covet it. Once they could seize the terrifying Bankai and hold it in their own hands, they would surely be able to obtain a lofty status second only to His Majesty and the Invisible Empire. Therefore, whether Nyikup and Belshi deliberately leaked the spiritual pressure or caused an explosion, they did so in order to deliberately attract the surrounding Shinigami to support Senju Cheng, whose spirit body was completely restricted. Then, Nyikup and Belshi could quickly slaughter those Shinigami in front of Senju Cheng and provoke Senju Cheng to release his Bankai. However, even Nyikup and Belshi did not expect that everything would go so smoothly, as if Senju Cheng was deliberately cooperating with them. And a captain who came to help in time had his body half blown up. You bastards, damn it. The next moment, with Senju Cheng as the center, large tracts of green grass spread wildly in all directions. Then, the green grass quickly began to expand and spread, turning into giant trees that soared into the sky. This amazing zanpakutō phenomenon that could be called a world-changing phenomenon made Nyikup and Belshi instinctively show horror on their faces, but their hands hidden in their pockets were tightly holding the star seal. Moreover, Nyikup and Belshi looked at each other at the same time, and the same vigilance was revealed in their eyes when they looked at each other. At this moment, they were undoubtedly absolute competitors. Whoever could seize this terrifying Bankai would definitely be able to achieve a qualitative improvement in their status in the Invisible Empire. Bankai. Morihei Buddha. Just as Senju Cheng recited the liberation words of Bankai, and a large number of giant trees gathered and began to form a wooden giant Buddha behind Senju Cheng. This is the opportunity. Your Bankai belongs to me. Nyikup and Belshi almost took out the star seal at the same time, and pointed it in the direction of Senju Cheng with a look of fanaticism and excitement. It was a silver seal the size of a normal person's palm, with star-like patterns on it, and it instantly bloomed into energy ripples similar to a cross, gushing energy streams in the direction of Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng felt an invisible wave at the first moment. Of course, this wave did not have a substantial impact on Senju Cheng. After all, the so-called Bankai Morihei Buddha is essentially just a certain form of Senju. However, in the excited voices of Nyikup and Belshi, Senju Cheng instantly deduced the role of the star seal. This is likely to be a special Caesar effect for the zanpakutō's Bankai. Immediately, inside the wooden giant Buddha, a large number of spirit particles quickly condensed into a zanpakutō under the control of Senju Cheng. When Senju Cheng had just come into contact with the true ability of Senju, spirit particle control, he had the possibility of perfectly imitating and copying other zanpakutō. After all, zanpakutō is essentially composed entirely of spirit particles. Of course, the gap between the spirit particles that make up a zanpakutō and the spirit particles that float in the air is much more exaggerated than the gap between diamonds and charcoal. However, that unrealistic fantasy has the possibility of being realized after Senju Cheng mastered the name of spirit particles. Although the premise of realization is that Senju Cheng needs to have a thorough understanding of a zanpakutō in order to perfectly copy it. However, with the power currently mastered by Senju Cheng, most of the zanpakutō abilities are undoubtedly useless. For example, the power of Akbara Rinji's Bankai Baboon's King Snape Tail Pill may not be as strong as the destructive power of the few wooden dragons created by Senju Cheng. However, in order to deal with some special situations, Senju Cheng once specially designed a real zanpakutō for himself, a zanpakutō named Morikamaikabouta. Lies and delusions may be exposed one day. But if Senju Cheng really has a zanpakutō named Morikamaikabutsu, who knows what Senju Cheng's real zanpakutō Bankai is? However, this is Senju Cheng's backup plan to deal with the sword god Nimurawayu in the 0 division, and it unexpectedly came in handy at this time. Since you want Bankai, then I will give you Bankai. Senju Cheng's eyes flashed, and with the cover of the huge wooden giant Buddha, he grasped the special zanpakutō Morikamaikabutsu that had just been created through spirit particles and performed Bankai. At this moment, Nyikup and Belshi, who had taken out the star seal at the same time, were a little confused. The star seal given by His Majesty seemed to have no effect on the Bankai of the God of Death. Just when Nyikup and Belshi were suspicious, the wooden giant Buddha that had just begun to form quickly disintegrated, and turned into spirit particles and rushed towards the star seal in Belshi's hand frantically. Chapter 762 Declaration of War. This scene also made Nyikup and Belshi, who saw that the original star chapter did not seize Bankai in the first place, suddenly dispel their doubts. Perhaps, it was just because the two star chapters seized the Bankai at the same time, but there was a slight delay under the interaction of the two star chapters. However, for Nyikup and Belshi, the most important thing at the moment was the Bankai that had already been seized. Especially Belshi, whose originally bearded and rough face was filled with uncontrollable ecstasy. Ha ha ha, this Bankai, belongs to me. Belchi shouted excitedly, holding the star chapter in his hand high, madly absorbing the spirit particles transformed by the wooden giant Buddha. As the wooden giant Buddha quickly disintegrated, Senju Cheng, whose face was filled with gloom, was secretly analyzing the principle of the star chapter seizing Bankai at the same time. Especially since this itself belongs to the change of spirit particles, what Senju Cheng reflected in his eyes was all the movements of the microscopic world of spirit particles. Everything that Bankai has transformed into was disintegrating and being seized, absorbed into the star chapter from the level of spirit particles. Unlike the ability of zanpakutō Muramasa, the essence of Muramasa is to directly hint at the zanpakutō itself and give it a physical form, which then leads to betrayal. However, the god of death itself still has the possibility of self-recovery of Bankai after enough time. The ability of the star chapter is more overbearing, forcibly seizing the zanpakutō's Bankai itself. And, Senju Cheng felt the Morai Kumai Buddha in his hand and unexpectedly found that only the Bankai was seized, and the Shikai was not affected at all. At this moment, the spirit particle torrent generated by the disintegration of the Morai Kumai Buddha was also completely absorbed by the star chapter. This made Belchi's face unable to help but grin with an excited smile showing 8 teeth, while Nyakop's expression was full of gloom, and even the look in his eyes staring at the star chapter in Belchi's hand was a little more sinister. However, Nyakop seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes suddenly turned back to Senju Cheng, who was unable to move due to the unguarded ability. To be precise, it was the King's Seal in Senju Cheng's chest. Senju Cheng's Bankai and the King's Seal were both things that His Majesty had designated to be taken. Since Senju Cheng's Bankai had been taken by that idiot Belchi, then the King's Seal must be obtained no matter what. Nyakop's eyes revealed greed and excitement. Before Belchi could react, he rushed towards Senju Cheng, aiming directly at Senju Cheng's chest. However, facing Nyakop's approach, Senju Cheng, who should have been a lamb to be slaughtered, did not look terrified, but slightly revealed a hint of displeasure. "Do you really think I'm an ATM? Press whatever you want." Even though Senju Cheng had deliberately cooperated with Nyakop and Belchi, his original intention was to reversely obtain information, or even to find the specific location of the invisible Empire wave which was hiding through them. However, facing Nyakop's obscene and excited expression as if he had seen a naked little girl, Senju Cheng couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. However, just when Senju Cheng was about to give Nyakop a little resistance and shock, he sensed something and paused. It was at this moment that the captain, Unohana, rushed to the vicinity. The collapsed house, Senju Cheng, who seemed to be controlled, saw from afar the wooden giant Buddha that seemed to be forcibly released by some ability, and Nyakop, who was approaching Senju Cheng with an excited and obscene face. The invisible bloody murderous intent swept the entire first team's dormitory almost instantly. And Nyakop, who felt as if he was locked by some kind of terror, felt as if he was instantly in a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses, and as if there were bloody flowers blooming. Still blood suit. Stimulated by this terrifying feeling, Nyakop instinctively entered the still blood suit state. The blood vessels on the surface of his body showed traces of blood vessels, and the spirit particles kept flowing in them, increasing Nyakop's physical strength to an incredible level. However, Nyakop only felt a pain in his neck, and then he felt that everything reflected in his eyes quickly began to blur. Senju Cheng, who was close to him, seemed to be constantly moving away. The next moment, Nyakop's head was stepped on by Unohana, and the zanpakutō with some bloodstains in his hand was held in Unohana's hand. Behind Unohana, Nyakop's body fell down, and blood gushed out from his neck crazily, completely dyeing Unohana's back red. In response, Unohana had no intention of avoiding it. His eyes, which exuded a strong murderous intent, turned to Senju Cheng, and his voice revealed concern. "Cheng, how are you?" At this moment, as Nyakop was killed instantly by the furious Unohana, the power that paralyzed Senju's spirit was also lifted. Senju, who had recovered his movements, waved his hands to indicate that he was fine. At the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw Aizen Sosok, who had been standing behind Belchi and holding up the mirror flower and water moon. Senju. No. Senju shouted hurriedly. If Aizen Sosok killed Belchi as well, wouldn't Senju have cooperated with these two idiots for so long in vain? This shout not only stopped Aizen Sosok, but also stopped Belchi, who was about to release the power of the Seireitei Buddha. Originally, when Belshi saw Nyakup being killed instantly by Unohana, she was terrified and almost instinctively chose to release the power she had just seized. However, now, Belshi thought that Makatao Senju knew that his Bankai was taken away, so he was afraid that he would use the power of Moride Kumaikabata. Then, Belshi raised the star seal in his hand under the sword of Aizen Sosok, and spoke arrogantly. Ha ha ha, it seems that Vice Captain Makatao Senju also understands the seriousness of the matter, and is also afraid that the taken Bankai will destroy the Seireitei in an instant. As soon as these words came out, Unohana eyes were obviously sharp and sank, and he spoke. Makatao, I will help you take back your Bankai. Wait, Makatao Senju hurriedly stopped Unohana, and then questioned in a serious tone. Who are you? Is your purpose just to destroy the Seireitei? Belshi put his hands back into his pockets, looked at Makatao Senju and Unohana as if he was looking at a lamb to be slaughtered, and announced. I am declaring war on the 13th Squadron of the Gotti on behalf of the Invisible Empire. In 5 days, the Invisible Empire will completely destroy the Seireitei. You should await for that moment in fear. Chapter 763. The ability called Holy Words. The Knights of the Star Cross, the Holy Word Odorisk Belshi. Hereby I inform you that you must remember this name that will bring you endless fear and despair. At the end, Belshi did not forget to introduce himself in a high-profile manner, and a layer of shadow began to cover his body. At this moment, Aizen Sosok, who was standing behind Belshi, gave a questioning look to Senju Makatao. Senju Makatao shook his head implicitly, asking Aizen Sosok to let Belshi leave. However, Senju Makatao's reaction was seen by Belshi, but was understood as a kind of helplessness. This made the smile on Belshi's face even more rampant and arrogant, and he glanced at the fallen Nyakup casually and said, Senju Makatao, the king on your body, just wait for me to come and take it in person next time. As the black shadow on Belshi completely covered his body, his figure disappeared instantly, as if he had entered that shadow. Belshi's disappearance made the atmosphere seem to fall into a heavy atmosphere. The barracks of the 1st Division were easily turned upside down by the enemy. This will undoubtedly be a heavy blow to the morale of the Gotti 13. The Invisible Empire. The Stern Cross Knights. Unohana repeated these two names and soon thought of the group led by Watch 1,000 years ago. Those rats who have been hiding like rats for 1,000 years actually dared to show up again. Unohana tone exuded a strong murderous intent and dissatisfaction. However, Senju Makatao knew that Unohana was angry about their own attack rather than the Invisible Empire's provocation against the Gotti 13. Unohana teacher, since the enemy has declared war head-on, let's hold a captain meeting. Senju Makatao said, and then looked in the direction of Kurosaki Mayuri. At this moment, with half of his body blown up, Kurosaki Mayuri took out an unknown potion from his body and stabbed himself. In less than a few breaths, the spirits of Kurosaki Mayuri that were blown to pieces completely recovered. However, Kurosaki Mayuri, who was blown away in an instant, seemed to have suffered a serious insult, and his face looked particularly ugly and angry. Especially when Kurosaki Mayuri was about to prove himself to Senju Makatao, he never expected to be slapped in the face before he even walked out of the 1st Division's dormitory. Of course, this was also related to the fact that Kurosaki Mayuri almost took Belshi's fist with his face in order to protect Senju Makatao in a hurry. However, this still seriously stimulated Kurosaki Mayuri's dignity. No matter what, we must make sure that guy stays alive in the laboratory for 1,000 years. Kurosaki Mayuri's eyes were full of viciousness. Noticing Kurosaki Mayuri's sudden change in eyes, Senju Makatao asked with concern. Captain Kurosaki Mayuri, are you okay? Nothing. Kurosaki Mayuri answered rather stubbornly, and even smiled at Senju Makatao on his face. And after such a short while, the captains of the other divisions who noticed the changes in the 1st Division also arrived at the scene one after another. Among them, when Amakashuso hurriedly arrived, he was already the last captain to arrive. Then, at the captain's meeting that was held, Makatao Senju roughly described the attack and disclosed relevant information about Yhwach 1,000 years ago. Faced with such an arrogant act of declaring war on the Gotti 13 by attacking and killing Makatao Senju, the entire Gotti 13 was undoubtedly completely enraged from top to bottom. Just some pure-blooded Queency remnants who have been hiding for so long dared to be so arrogant. 5 days later. Interesting. We must give those guys a thorough counterattack to maintain the name of the Gotti. Faced with the angry and high-spirited reactions of many captains, Makatao Senju reminded them. Captains, you must not underestimate us. We're in the open, while the Invisible Empire is in the dark. This means that the Invisible Empire is very likely to know the intelligence of the Seireitei in detail. Under such circumstances, the Invisible Empire still dares to make such a statement. It must be fearless. Aiden Sosok, who has always been an honest man, simply echoed. Mr. Makotao is right. Senju Makotao. Senju Makotao looked at Aiden Sosok in a daze, thinking that Aiden Sosok would have a high-sounding speech next, which would add something to the war between the Gotti 13 and the Stern-Crossed Knights. Unexpectedly, Aiden Sosok simply made a presence known, and then kept silent, as if the matter was simply a matter of interest. Helplessly, Senju Makotao could only personally present and analyze the known abilities of the Stern-Crossed Knights in the captain's meeting room. First, Holy Words. Second, Star Chapter. Among them, Senju Makotao had already paid attention to the abilities of the Holy Words when he was in Hukomundo. When Nyikup and Belchi attacked, Senju Makotao deliberately took on Nyikup's Holy Text ability head-on, so as to intuitively analyze the nature of the Holy Text ability. Of course, in the war with the Stern-Crossed Knights 1,000 years ago, there were also various intelligence records about the ability of the Holy Text. Combining various intelligence and legends about Yhwach, Senju Makotao easily judged that the Holy Text ability of the Stern-Crossed Knights came from Yhwach's gift. In Senju Makotao's judgment, Yhwach has a special ability that is suspected of giving others abilities. Of course, this is not a direct and rough gift, but more like planting a seed in someone else's body, cultivating that seed with someone else's own unique soil, and thus producing a special flower. This flower is also called the ability of Holy Text. The holiness that Senju Makotao had witnessed with his own eyes shows that Yhwach is very likely to have the ability to recycle flowers at any time. As Makotao Senju spoke out his analysis of the Holy Words, the captains could not help but fall into deep thought. So, the strongest of the Stern-Crossed Knights must be Yhwach, but the biggest weakness will also be Yhwach. Kachikabyokaya said. That's right, the power of the Holy Words essentially comes from Yhwach, so as long as Yhwach is forced into a certain predicament or desperate situation, and forced to take back the Holy Words, then the rest of the Stern-Crossed Knights will fall apart. After a pause, Makotao Senju spoke. However, there is another way to think about it, that is, before Yhwach takes back the power of the Holy Words, killing as many members of the Stern-Crossed Knights as possible can minimize Yhwach's power. Chapter 764 Preparation for War. Analyzing Yhwach and the ability called Holy Words from two different perspectives undoubtedly gave the captains an intuitive understanding. However, this also illustrates another point from the side, that is, Yhwach's strength. Through the analysis of the two members of the Holy Crossed Knights who attacked the first team this time, it is easy to judge that they have combat power that is not weaker than, or even stronger than, the ordinary captain level. And if the power of all the members of the Holy Crossed Knights can be attributed to Yhwach himself, then the upper limit of Yhwach's power is undoubtedly extremely terrifying and amazing. For a time, many captains can be said to have fallen into thinking, knowing that the opponent they are facing this time must not be underestimated. And in addition to the power of the Holy Words, compared to the Stern-Crossed Knights 1,000 years ago, they also possess a power called Star Chapter. Senju Makotao continued to speak, and took out the self-created zanpakutō Morikabuta, and said with a solemn face. Star Seal seems to have forcibly seized the power of Bankai. Now my zanpakutō has completely lost its Bankai and can only use Seireitei. As soon as these words came out, the Shinigami present were almost all shocked. Bankai. As the captain's iconic power that is different from other Shinigami, once their Bankai is seized, it is undoubtedly an extremely terrifying weakening and restriction for the captains. How is it possible? Senju-sama, are you serious? Could it be that this is just the power of some kind of holy text that has been sealed? If it was seized, then, I'm afraid there will be big trouble. For a while, in the captain's meeting room, which has always been solemn, there were even waves of discussions. At this moment, Senju Makotao did not deliberately maintain order, but allowed the captains to discuss and communicate until all the Shinigami gradually accepted this shocking information. If the power of the holy text was still within Senju Makotao's expectations, then after realizing the existence of the Star Seal, even Senju Makotao had a strong sense of crisis. Because the Star Seal is too bulky for the God of Death, it can even be said to be an unreasonable dimensionality reduction attack. Fortunately, the first target of the Stern-Crossed Knights attack was the Kyokuya Palace, which allowed Makotao Senju to have a relatively intuitive observation and judgment of the holy text power possessed by the Stern-Crossed Knights. In addition, the first use of the Star Seal was aimed at Makatao Senju, allowing Makatao Senju to create a pre-designed zanpakutō through the special nature of spiritual control, so that he had the opportunity to interpret the power of the Star Seal. Otherwise, even if Makatao Senju has been on guard against Yuta Bark, the entire Seireitei will definitely be caught off guard by the stern-crossed knights. The asymmetry of intelligence, it is very likely that the captains will be deprived of a large number of Bankai at the moment of contact with the stern-crossed knights, and most of the power of the entire Gotti 13 will be instantly disintegrated. You know, the number of captains of the Gotti 13 who can fight without relying on Bankai is very small. Senju Makatao also answered the captains' questions one by one, further breaking their remaining fluke mentality. According to the information revealed by Nyikup and Belshi, the Star Seal is not only a power independent of the Holy Word, and since Nyikup and Belshi took out the Star Seal at the same time, it is very likely that this is a special ability mastered by every Knight of the Holy Cross. In addition, Belshi, who left after the declaration of war, said that after the Star Seal seized the Bankai, it is very likely that it still has the power to manipulate the corresponding Bankai. Therefore, it can be basically judged that this is a targeted method developed by Earthwatch for the Shinigami after his defeat 1,000 years ago. When hearing this, most of the Shinigami present couldn't help but feel cold in their hearts, and even had a slight sense of powerlessness. Except for Kinpachi Zaraki, Yorishi Shifen Yuan and Retsu Unohana, for that captains, most of their combat power is concentrated on Bankai. Without Bankai, facing opponents of the same level, the captains basically have no hope of winning. What's even more terrifying is that Senju Makatao's terrifying Bankai was actually taken away by the enemy. Gurgle hearing this, Kensei Rokurume couldn't help swallowing his saliva and said, if the enemy releases Senju-sama's Bankai, I'm afraid that with just one strike, the entire Seireitei will be over. As soon as these words came out, the wooden giant Buddha that seemed to be endless and pressed across the entire Seireitei 2 years ago appeared clearly in the eyes of the Shinigami present again. If it was that thing, it would really take only a moment to destroy Seireitei. Seeing that the morale of the Shinigami present seemed to have dropped to the freezing point, Senju Makatao hurriedly spoke to ease the situation. Captains, don't worry too much. Even if it is the same zanpakutō, the power it exerts is completely different depending on the user. When Senju Makatao mentioned this, Hitsuge Yatshiru unconsciously straightened his chest, feeling that he still had the right to speak authoritatively in this regard. However, before Hitsuge Yatshiru could speak to support this statement, Senju Makatao continued. And the reason why my Bankai is so amazing is that a considerable part of the credit is also thanks to the power of the King's Seal. After a pause, Senju Makatao took out a Star Seal from his arms and said. More importantly, a Star Seal was found on the body of Nyikup, who was killed by Captain Unohana himself. Then, combined with the process of my Bankai being taken away and this Star Seal sample for research, the Technology Development Bureau may not be able to find a way to crack it before the Invisible Empire attacks. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the death gods present lit up almost at the same time. In the face of such a buggy means of the enemy, the own side was able to find that direction and hope of response in a very short time, which would undoubtedly have a strong uplifting effect on morale. At this moment, the atmosphere in the captain's meeting room also reached the state that Senju Makatao expected. Pay enough attention to the Invisible Empire, understand that you need to be prepared to face the cruel war next, and maintain enough morale and fighting spirit. Then, Unohana Retsu, the Captain General, began to make specific combat arrangements for each division, summoned all the Shinigami on missions, divided the defense areas and tasks of each division, and made various emergency plans. Suddenly, the Gotti 13 Division, a war machine that had been prepared for 2 years, began to operate at full speed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 765. Public Spirit Overlay. Senju Makatao's most urgent task at the moment is to work with Kurosachi Mairi to find a way to crack the Star Seal. However, when Kurosachi Mairi personally led Senju Makatao into his own treasured laboratory, he looked at Aizen Sasuke, who was following Senju Makatao, with obvious dissatisfaction and disdain, and said in a sarcastic tone, "Captain Amoeba, don't you need to go back to the 5th Division to prepare for the war? Otherwise, if you die in the war, I will have to trouble you to attend your captain's funeral." Amoeba Sasuke said with an honest face. Thank you Captain Kurosaki Mairi for your concern, but Vice Captain Inamuramo is very capable, and those small matters can be left to her. I'm more concerned about the research on cracking the Star Seal. Kurosaki Mairi said with undisguised contempt in his words. You don't know how to research, and following me into the laboratory will only dirty the floor, and even if you destroy some important experimental materials, do you want to replenish them yourself? Senju Makoto raised his hand and interrupted. Captain Kurosaki Mairi, Captain Amague is better than you think, and will surely play an important role in cracking the Star Seal. Don't waste time. Kurosaki Mairi's expression froze slightly when he heard this, and his white eyes shifted to the honest face of Amague Shosuke. Kurosaki Mairi had never heard of the research talent of the new 5th Division Amague Shosuke. However, since it was Senju Makoto, the big money sponsor who supported the great scientific research cause and his own exploration of the truth of the world, who said so, Kurosaki Mairi forced a smile on his face with some difficulty, warned Amague Shosuke not to touch any place in the laboratory, and then opened this top-secret laboratory located hundreds of meters underground in the Seireitei. In an instant, a space completely different from the classical style of the Seireitei itself appeared in front of Senju Makoto. At this moment, Senju Makoto even had the illusion of arriving in a science fiction world. Whether it was the ground, walls or ceiling, it was all simple silver white metal, and there were culture dishes everywhere, and strange instruments with unknown functions. Although Kurosaki Mairi has been under surveillance by Zaraki Sawaya for the past 2 years, and Kurosaki Mairi has also regularly reported a large number of scientific research results. However, when Senju Makoto saw this laboratory with his own eyes, he finally realized that the huge amount of funds provided to the Technology Development Bureau was probably diverted by Kurosaki Mairi for his own valuable research. After entering this laboratory, Kurosaki Mairi became visibly excited, as if he had returned to his own exclusive Garden of Eden. Even the respect he deliberately maintained for Senju Makoto was weakened a lot, and he said bluntly, "Come on, Senju-sama, put the Star Seal on the tray over there, let me do some basic analysis of its composition, structure, and density first." After a pause, Kurosaki Mairi, who was almost lying in front of a huge instrument operation panel, raised his head forward, and then turned his head 180 degrees, staring at Tenbei Shosuke with his round eyes, and warned. "Captain Amague, remember, don't mess with the things in this laboratory, otherwise don't blame me for making you a part of it." Afterwards, Kurosaki Mairi confirmed that Amague Shosuke was indeed following behind Senju Makoto like an honest man, and did not extend any hand that should not be extended, and then he raised his head again. However, what Kurosaki Mairi did not know is that the seemingly honest Amague Shosuke was actually performing various dazzling operations on another instrument not far from him, and even seemed to be more familiar with it than Kurosaki Mairi himself. It was as if Aizen Sasuke had not entered this laboratory that Kurosaki Mairi regarded as a forbidden area for the first time. Soon, various basic data about the Star Seal had been analyzed, and Senju Makoto was also assisting in the research based on the only known process of the seizure of Bankai. However, this was not the main purpose of Senju Makoto's special visit to the Technology Development Bureau. The threat of Star Seal is great, but with the Star Seal sample and the specific changes of the spirit particles in the process of the Bankai being seized, Makoto Senju believes that both Meguri Kurosaki and Sasuke Aizen are absolutely capable of cracking it. Therefore, after describing the specific changes of the spirit particles when the Bankai is seized, Makoto Senju, in the name of his own Joint Technology Development Bureau, officially announced the development of a new technology, spirit-body superposition. With the joint endorsement of Makoto Senju and the Technology Development Bureau, this new technology will undoubtedly not be questioned. This was a special technology that Makoto Senju had almost perfected decades ago, but in addition to solving the problem of long-term contact with strong spiritual pressure for Kuchiki-hime, it was only for Hizajishue to carry out the spirit-body superposition transformation. And Hizajishue's spiritual pressure and combat power far exceeds the original trajectory, which is enough to show that in addition to intuitively strengthening the strength of the spirit body, the potential for spirit body superposition to greatly strengthen it is also real. Therefore, under the severe test of the upcoming war, the 13th Division of the GOTI also decided to announce this technology that is likely to have a far-reaching impact. After all, the most terrifying thing about spiritual superposition is not the strengthening at the god of death. In the continuous research of Senju Makoto in recent decades, it has been perfected to the point that ordinary residents of Rukonge who undergo the spiritual superposition operation have a great chance to have spiritual power. This will undoubtedly fundamentally and completely change the current situation of countless Rukongei by supporting the Seireitei in the Soul Society. And this is also what Senju Cheng intended. This time, the 13th Division of the Gotti will face not only the Invisible Empire, but also the lofty Soul King Palace. Once Senju Cheng sits on the final king between the three parties, it will be fine, but if Senju Cheng fails, the spiritual superposition technology that has been spread will also keep a new possibility in the Rukongei that has remained unchanged for tens of millions of years. Then, in addition to Senju personally performing a soul superposition operation on the captain and vice-captain of the Gotti 13, which increased their chances of winning in the next war. The rest of the soldiers of the 4th and 12th Divisions performed soul superposition operations on other members of the Gotti 13 divisions based on the published technology. 5 days. The deadline for the war declared by the Invisible Empire represented by Doris Belshi of the Stern-Crossed Knights came in a flash. On this day, because Senju had already determined that the enemy came from the shadows, the soul-shielding membrane that had protected the Seireitei in the past would not have the slightest effect, and the enemy could appear in every corner of the Seireitei at any time. Therefore, the entire Seireitei has entered the highest level of alert, and the soldiers of each division that make up the formation are constantly patrolling, and the captain-level combat power is also ready to face the attack. Chapter 766 The Invasion begins. Chapter 766 The Invasion begins. The entire Seireitei was filled with a solemn atmosphere, and every Shinigami almost subconsciously placed his hand on the sheath of his zanpakutō, while his eyes kept scanning the surroundings. Where will the enemy appear from? This thought was not only in the minds of the many Shinigami who were constantly patrolling and guarding the Seireitei, but also in the minds of the captains who were in charge of the various squads, as well as Senju and Retsu Unohana who were standing side by side on the top floor of the 1st Squadron's castle tower, who were also thinking the same thing. Moreover, Senju and Retsu Unohana knew even more clearly that this would be a beginning. The beginning of a radical change in the world's structure, the beginning of the war with the Invisible Empire, which would eventually drag the lofty Soul King Palace and Squad Zero into the flames of war. Do you think we will win? Retsu Unohana asked calmly. Senju looked down at the Seireitei below and answered. We have no reason to lose. Unohana Retsu's face was gentle and elegant, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he said with a smile. In fact, I don't care about winning or losing. Even if I die in battle, I will just fall into hell. On the contrary, that may be a place where you can abandon reason and fight to your heart's content. But, if I fall into hell, leaving alone, wouldn't it be too cruel? Senju was slightly startled, then turned to look at Unohana Retsu, and said in surprise. Teacher, why do you say such an unlucky thing? I just said it out of inspiration. Almost all people of my generation have fallen into hell. Even Seireitei has realized his own powerlessness and chose to retreat. However, before Unohana Retsu could finish, Senju rarely and forcefully covered Unohana Retsu's head with his palm and interrupted him. Teacher, there is no possibility that you will fall into hell alone. Either I will accompany you to hell, or, even if I break through hell, I will definitely bring you back to my side. Unohana Retsu heard this, and her beautiful eyes that were originally narrowed widened unconsciously. This was the first time that Senju expressed his attitude so directly. And, it was gratifying. Unohana Retsu couldn't help but bend the corners of his mouth into a charming smile, but his expression was a little angry, and he slapped Senju palm and said, you are getting more and more excessive now. You actually made such rude and presumptuous actions to your teacher. However, Senju looked at the dignified and elegant Unohana Retsu in front of him, who tried hard to maintain the dignity of a teacher, but unconsciously exuded the breath of a mature woman, and his heart couldn't help but warm up. In a sense, Unohana Retsu can be said to be the perfect partner that Senju expected. Whether it is externally or internally, whether it is above or below, these 2 years are almost the happiest days that Senju has lived in 100 years. The next moment, the heat that unconsciously rose in Senju eyes was forcibly suppressed, and replaced by firmness and seriousness. Be prepared for danger in times of peace. Senju has never forgotten or relaxed the threat from Hyoshuba, and that is not a peace that can be exchanged for simply retreating or avoiding. So, Senju ignored Unohana Retsu's reserve, and directly hugged Unohana Retsu, who was wearing the captain's Aori, into his arms, and said calmly and firmly, Teacher, please be at ease. Yes. Being treated so rudely in broad daylight, Yuna Hanaretsu's reserve instinctively resisted, but as if sensing Senju Makoto's emotional changes, Yuna Hanaretsu finally chose to obediently stick to Senju Makoto's chest. Senju Makoto felt the warmth and softness in his arms, and his eyes softened unconsciously. He raised his hand and hugged Yuna Hanaretsu's back. However, before Senju Makoto could enjoy this moment of warmth, blue spirit fire pillars suddenly lit up in various places of the Seireitei. Strange spiritual pressures came from those blue spirit fire pillars. Here they come. This thought flashed through the minds of countless death gods almost at the same time. In the real world, Karakura town. When the spirit fire pillars appeared in large numbers in various places of the Seireitei, Hirako Makoto, who had been staying in the real world, frowned and blurted out. The target of the attack by the Invisible Empire is still the Seireitei. It seems that Vice Captain Senju's worries are unnecessary. I wonder if Youthwatch's target is also Karakura town, and he will try to destroy the Karakura town creation King-ge like Raisin Sosok did. Fenj said. However, this also shows that the enemy is even more arrogant than Raisin Sosok, and is confident that he can defeat the Gotti. 13 inches one fell swoop. Hirako Makoto gritted his teeth and said. Seireitei watched Hirako Mako and Fenj analyzing each other, and couldn't help but urge them. Don't talk so much nonsense here, let's quickly support the Seireitei. Idiot. However, Hirako Mako shook his head and spoke calmly. The task assigned to us by Vice Captain Senju is not only to wait for an opportunity to return to the Seireitei, but also to wait for someone. Waiting for someone. Who? Seireitei asked subconsciously. Kurosaki Ichigo. Hirako Mako replied. Her. Seireitei heard this, and suddenly realized it, but his face showed full of doubts, and said. Kurosaki Ichigo should be considered a queency now, but our enemy is the stern-crossed knights led by the king of queensies, Yuhabok. Is Kurosaki Ichigo really reliable? This point is not only felt by Seireitei, but even Hirako Mako may not have such an idea in his heart. The war between the Gotti 13 and the Holy Crossed Knights is undoubtedly closer to a war between different races. According to common sense, from the perspective of the queency, it is in the best interests of the queency for Youthwatch to win. Therefore, as a queency now, Ichigo Kurosaki has no reason to help the Gotti 13. This is the order of Vice Captain Senju. As Fenj said this, all the doubts and dissatisfaction of Seireitei were instantly suppressed. However, Fenj felt the passage of time, and Ichigo Kurosaki was still nowhere to be seen. He couldn't help but feel a little anxious and said. By the way, Hirako, did you really notify Ichigo Kurosaki? He won't not come, right? I notified him 4 days ago, and Ichigo Kurosaki's reaction was quite excited. He wanted to go to the Seireitei on the spot. In the end, I appeased him and agreed to meet here today. Hirako Mako said calmly, but his eyes gradually became more suspicious. He didn't show up for a long time. Would Ichigo Kurosaki really turn to the side of the Invisible Empire? Chapter 767s. Now, the war of invasion of the Invisible Empire against the Seireitei has officially begun, but Ichigo Kurosaki has not yet appeared at the gathering place. This undoubtedly made the suspicious Hirako Mako subconsciously think of all kinds of possibilities. Could it be, Vice Captain Senju meant that if Ichigo Kurosaki turned to the Invisible Empire, the threat should be eliminated in advance? Just at this time, a figure approached Hirako Mako and others at high speed. Flying lean kick. It took less than a few breaths for the figure to sense the spiritual pressure and stop in front of them. The orange-haired boy, wearing the queency costume, had a face full of anxiety. Ichigo Kurosaki. Even after confirming the arrival, Mako Hirako still did not relax at all, but asked. You are late, Mr. Kurosaki, what's the reason? Sorry, Ichigo Kurosaki said with an anxious and apologetic look on his face. I originally made an appointment with Rai to go to Soul Society together, but Rai didn't meet up with me, so I went to look for him. Mako Hirako frowned slightly and said. Ishida Rai. Didn't find him. Ichigo Kurosaki nodded and replied. Yes, I don't know where I went. I looked for him in Karakura town for several times, and it seems that he disappeared. Mako Hirako couldn't help but have some guesses in his heart. He secretly hated himself for being a little careless. He focused all his attention on Ichigo Kurosaki and forgot that there was a queency named Ishida in Karakura town. However, Mako Hirako also understood that it was meaningless to continue discussing these things now. Since Ichigo Kurosaki, who was specially instructed by Vice Captain Senju, has arrived, the most important thing is to support Soul Society as soon as possible. Then, Mako Hirako contacted the Technology Development Bureau to quickly open the gate, and then led everyone into the Dangai to support Soul Society. While Kurosaki Ichigo followed Hirako Mako's footsteps without hesitation, he asked, "Mr. Hirako, what's the situation in the Seireitei now? The Invisible Empire has begun to invade. According to the preliminary information provided by the Technology Development Bureau, there are as many as 20 spiritual fire pillars in the Seireitei that can be used by the Invisible Empire at the same time. Each of them is led by a member of the Holy Cross Knights to attack the Seireitei." Hirako Mako said in a deep voice, making everyone understand that the battle situation is not optimistic while they're on their way quickly. 20. You know, there are only 13 official captains in the 13th Division of the Gotti. Damn, where did this enemy come from? Is it related to Wazan? Kurosaki Ichigo asked anxiously. Kurosaki Ichigo, this is also something I was going to tell you in advance. Hirako Mako turned his head and looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and said, "According to the current intelligence, the Invisible Empire was established by the Quincy clan, so the enemies you were about to face are all Quincy clans. Are you mentally prepared?" Upon hearing this, Ichigo Kurosaki's expression was slightly startled. For Ichigo Kurosaki, if the Shinigami can be regarded as Ichigo Kurosaki's paternal clan, then the Quincy is undoubtedly Ichigo Kurosaki's maternal clan. But the next moment, a sentence emerged in Ichigo Kurosaki's mind. "You should not be confused, it is enough to firmly believe in protecting the people you cherish." Almost in just a moment, Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes regained their firmness. Soon, with Ichigo Kurosaki and others rushing at full speed, the exit of the Dangai leading to the interior of the Seireitei was already visible in the distance. "We're here," Seireitei said with some joy, and his speed could not help but speed up a little. He broke away from the 2-2 formation originally formed by Ichigo Kurosaki and Mako Hirako, and was the first to go out in the direction of the exit. However, just as everyone was about to successfully reach the Seireitei, they instinctively relaxed for a moment. "Star, kick on the stage." A high-pitched and rough voice suddenly echoed from the broken world behind, causing Ichigo Kurosaki and others to subconsciously freeze for a moment. Then, Hirako Mako realized something and his face suddenly changed, and he said in a hurry, "Histori, be careful." Huh. Seireitei was half a beat slower to react, and instinctively turned his head to look at Mako Hirako, with a hint of doubt in his round eyes. The next moment, a sturdy figure fell from the top of Seireitei's head like a meteorite. Pa! In the suddenly contracted pupils of Ichigo Kurosaki, Mako Hirako, and Ryoja Avenged Cow, Seireitei's petite body was completely crushed by that figure, and even a few drops of blood splashed on the faces of Ichigo Kurosaki, Mako Hirako, and Ryoja Avenged Cow at the same time. Oh wow, what a perfect debut! I'm the big star-S masculine of the Holy Cross Knights. Masculine didn't care about the corpse under his feet. He even spread his legs completely stained with blood. He also posed in a posture similar to a hero's debut and spoke in a self-intoxicated manner. This scene almost made Hirako Mako's face completely distorted with anger. "Asshole, get out of here!" Hirako Mako's figure instantly rushed towards Masculine, and the zanpakutō in his hand flashed and pointed directly at Masculine's chest. However, Masculine, who was still wearing a mask with a 5-pointed star emblem on his head, grabbed Hirako Mako's zanpakutō with his backhand, and said in a frivolous tone with a hint of dissatisfaction, "Masculine is not a bastard, but a big star admired by thousands of people." On the contrary, Masculine's voice suddenly became a little fierce and terrifying and continued, "You bunch of Shinigami are the ones who deserve to be crushed into pulp." Almost as soon as Masculine's voice fell, the palm holding the zanpakutō pulled up and forcibly opened the empty door in front of Masculine's chest. At that moment, the relatively thin Masculine was like a chicken being lifted up in front of Masculine. With the sound of the air bursting, Masculine's knees suddenly rose and hit Masculine's chest. Bang! Masculine's whole body instantly bent like a shrimp, and even a series of piercing bone-cracking sounds could be heard faintly. "Ms. Masculine!" Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenjikaluja shouted subconsciously, attacking Masculine from the left and right at the same time, forcing Masculine to release the palm holding Masculine's zanpakutō. "Oh my, how despicable!" You actually used a despicable strategy at outnumbering a hero? Masculine jumped back to avoid the attack, and taunted with some frustration and helplessness. Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima stood in front of the fallen Hirako Mako, and asked with concern while vigilantly guarding against Masculine. Mr. Hirako, are you okay? Hirako, how are you? Chapter 768 Love. Facing the concerns of Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima, Hirako Mako seemed to have not heard them. The body lying on the ground like a big shrimp squirmed for a while, and then struggled to stand up. However, when Hirako Mako stood up, Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima noticed that Hirako Mako's left arm was obviously twisted and deformed and hanging weakly. Obviously, facing Masculine's knee strike, Hirako Mako paid the price of his left hand to avoid being seriously injured and losing his combat effectiveness. Oh, you are worthy at being a captain-level death god. You are completely different from the miscellaneous soldier who was directly trampled just now. You are fine. Seeing this, Masculine seemed to be a little annoyed and admired. Suddenly, Hirako Mako suddenly raised his head, and his red eyes revealed unprecedented anger. Hirako Mako knew very well that Masculine was deliberately provoking him. Whether it was the sneak attack on the weakest Seireitei Hiri, or the provocations that were all meaningful, it was enough to show that Masculine's seemingly reckless and rude behavior concealed a sinister and despicable intention. But, Mako Hirako still felt an irrepressible anger rising in his chest, and he didn't even dare to look in the direction of Seireitei Hiri. Crunch, crunch. Mako Hirako ground his teeth, making angry sounds, and then spoke. Ichigo Kurosaki, Rujira, you continue to go to the Seireitei for support, and I will take care of this enemy. Ichigo Kurosaki and Rujira Fenj Kao heard this and looked at Mako Hirako in shock, clearly feeling that this was an impulsive and irrational decision. As for Masculine, he exaggeratedly put his palms to his ears to make a listening gesture and said, "Oh, what a big boast I heard." Facing the big star Masculine, he actually dared to boast that he could solve the problem by himself. This really made the big star Masculine angry. Kurosaki Ichigo persuaded. Mr. Hirako, don't be impulsive. Let's work together to solve the enemy first. This enemy is very unusual, Hirako. Fenj Kalushima also said with a frown. Hirako Mako took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Since the Invisible Empire can send enemies to intercept us in the broken world, it means that the current situation of the Seireitei may be worse than we imagined. It is understood that a considerable part of the Seireitei's arrangements are monitored by the Invisible Empire. And the Invisible Empire must believe that our support will bring changes to the situation, so we must not be held back by one person. After a pause, Hirako Mako stared at Masculine with a murderous look, and said, "More importantly, my zanpakutō abilities are not suitable for group combat, so if you stay here, I won't be able to exert my full power." Listening to Hirako Mako's firm words, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ujijiro looked at each other and realized that what Hirako Mako said made a lot of sense. This is not the most important battlefield. It is irrational to be dragged here by anger. Then, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ujijiro didn't continue to talk nonsense, and their figures flew left and right towards the exit behind them during the battle. This scene made Masculine's face look a little more ugly. His mission was to prevent Kurosaki Ichigo and the other Shinigami from supporting the Seireitei. He didn't expect that the other party could still maintain such a degree of rationality under such circumstances. The next moment, Masculine rushed towards Kurosaki Ichigo and Ujijiro without hesitation and shouted, "Don't you dare to look directly at the brilliance of the big star Masculine. This is really infuriating." However, just when Masculine was about to pass Hirako Mako to chase Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima, the shape of the zanpakutō in Hirako Mako's hand changed, and an exaggerated large ring appeared at the tail. An invisible fragrance entered Masculine's nose. In an instant, as Hirako Mako raised his head, an exaggerated and weird smile appeared on his face, and everything in his eyes turned upside down. Fall down, reverse stroke. Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima did not hesitate at all, and suddenly rushed out of the gate. But the next moment, everything that came into view made Kurosaki Ichigo and Fenj Kalushima stunned for a moment. The majestic and solemn Jinglingsang in the past was still full of smoke at this moment, and the area turned into ruins was actually more than the intact houses. His eyes casually swept around, and the bodies of the Shinigami and the bodies wearing the uniforms of the Invisible Empire were mixed and fell on the roadside, in the ruins, on the rooftops, and strong spiritual pressures were constantly colliding in various places in the Seireitei. Even though Ichigo Kurosaki and Rudra Hogama had participated in the war with Sosafrazen 2 years ago, they were still shocked by the tragic battle at the moment. Just when Ichigo Kurosaki was confused by the chaos and tragedy in front of him, and didn't know where to start. A weight similar to the 77th binding path. Tenjokura enveloped Ichigo Kurosaki, and a fast-talking voice sounded in Ichigo Kurosaki's mind. This is Nanao, the deputy commander of the Gotti 13th Division Wartime Command, acting Shinigami Kurosaki. Ichigo, can you hear me? Yes. Ichigo Kurosaki hurriedly replied after hearing this. Thank you for your support. Please go to the direction of the 7th Division's barracks immediately to support Captain Kensei Gurume. Nanao's voice sounded hurriedly. Ichigo Kurosaki first glanced at Hokaluzura and found that Hokaluzura also looked like he had received some orders. Then, Ichigo Kurosaki and Hokaluzura immediately went in different directions. Ichigo Kurosaki, the enemy who were about to face is El Patriarca Brata of the Holy Cross Knights, whose holy word ability is love. Once hit by the heart-shaped heterochromatic substance shot by Pape, including zanpakutō, any existence with self-will will completely obey Pape and be controlled by him. So you must be careful later, and try your best to resist the heterochromatic substance with the unique ability of the Quincy to absorb spirit particles to fight. Listening to the detailed information conveyed by Nanao, Ichigo Kurosaki's heart was determined. I understand. Ichigo Kurosaki's figure quickly flashed in the Seireitei and soon arrived at the area of the former 7th Division's barracks. At this moment, an ugly old man with dark skin and fat body was making a heart-shaped gesture with his hands in the air. The disgusting gesture almost instantly made Ichigo Kurosaki feel uncomfortable. What was even more shocking was that Kensei Gurume, who used to call himself a man, was actually twisting his waist in front of the old man as if he was courting a mate. Ichigo Kurosaki. Chapter 769 This is War. At this moment, Ichigo Kurosaki understood that although Kensei Gurume was still alive, he was actually dead. The kind of social death. Although he didn't know what the principle of the wartime command was, Ichigo Kurosaki knew that Kensei Gurume's enchanting courtship posture was definitely not just for him. However, Ichigo Kurosaki had undergone professional combat training after all, and he would not easily laugh out loud in such an occasion. Instead, Ichigo Kurosaki stretched out his hand and grasped it, and a long sword of spirit child formed in his hand, stepping on the flying lean kick and quickly went towards Pape who controlled Kensei Gurume. Even though Ichigo Kurosaki was a Quincy, it was obviously impossible to learn skills such as spirit bows from scratch. Therefore, Ichigo Kurosaki's fighting style is undoubtedly a more thorough Malayshu to the Ryushida. Relying on the kendo experience accumulated in the past, he developed a unique fighting style of the Quincy. However, before Ichigo Kurosaki could get close to Pape, Kensei Gurume stood in front of Ichigo Kurosaki as if he was a puppet being manipulated. This scene made Ichigo Kurosaki feel a little embarrassed. It was obvious that there was no problem with Kensei Gurume's vital signs. Even his pupils were dilated and tears were still flowing, as if he was a big man who had suffered unimaginable humiliation. It was precisely because of this that Ichigo Kurosaki could not help but hesitate for a moment. At this moment, Nanao's voice sounded in his ears. Ichigo Kurosaki, attack Captain Kensei Gurume and try to destroy his ability to move. Ichigo Kurosaki did not hesitate anymore, and the spirit sword chopped off Kensei Gurume's limbs without hesitation. The simplest and most effective way to destroy the ability to move is undoubtedly to cut off the limbs. Kensei Gurume's movements were much slower under control. Almost as soon as a blue light flashed, Kensei Gurume became two Kensei Gurume in Ichigo Kurosaki's hands, and his limbs fell to the ground intact. However, as Kensei Gurume fell, the obese Pape had a small spirit bow in his hand, and a spirit arrow was aimed at Ichigo Kurosaki. This is the holy arrow of love. Boom. An amazing explosion. However, this did not make Pape's face happy, but instead he looked at Ichigo Kurosaki with a serious expression. Such a powerful holy arrow of destruction is enough to penetrate any captain-level Shinigami. The so-called explosion, on the contrary, means that the holy arrow of destruction was blocked. The next moment, as the smoke of the explosion dissipated, Ichigo Kurosaki, who maintained his still blood suit intact, appeared in front of Pape. Pape subconsciously exclaimed, "What an amazing still blood suit is this? How is it possible?" You know, the so-called still blood suit is essentially based on the blood concentration of the pure-blooded queency to produce corresponding defensive strength. In other words, the closer the blood concentration is to that of the queency king Ythwach, the more terrifying the defensive strength of the still blood suit. However, even if we look at the entire Holy Cross Knights, there are only a few members who can do this, even if they can block the holy arrow with a still blood suit. Who are you? Pape asked. Kuroseki Ichigo. Pape's eyes widened unconsciously and said, Are you actually Kuroseki Ichigo, one of the 5 special combat powers? Special combat power? What is that? Kuroseki Ichigo said subconsciously, and then the still blood suit he maintained dissipated and quickly transformed into the state of moving blood suit. Kuroseki Ichigo's speed instantly soared a lot, even surpassing the speed bonus provided by the past heavenly lock Zanjutsu, and disappeared in front of Pape as a residual image. Realizing that something was wrong, Pape suddenly felt an unprecedented crisis. He quickly made a heart-shaped gesture with his hands in front of his chest to prepare for releasing his ability, while his eyes were frantically scanning the surroundings. The next moment, a long sword of spirit child pierced through Pape's body from behind, perfectly piercing Pape's heart, instantly eliminating Pape's breath of life. Then, after confirming Pape's death, Ichigo Kuroseki quickly went in the direction of Kensei Gurume and shouted, Vice Captain where is the doctor in charge of treatment? Captain Gurume needs urgent treatment. Before Ichigo Kuroseki could finish, Ichigo Kuroseki suddenly found a patch of green grass around the ground where Kensei Gurume fell, and the green grass was entwining Kensei Gurume's wound, preventing Kensei Gurume's wound from bleeding. Seeing this, Ichigo Kuroseki instantly thought of something and asked, Is this the ability of Master Senju? Nanao's voice also rang in Ichigo Kuroseki's ears at the same time. That's right, so there's no need to worry about the treatment of injuries. Lord Senju is maintaining the treatment needs of the entire battlefield. As long as the person is not killed on the spot, Lord Senju can provide emergency treatment in time. In addition, Ichigo Kuroseki saw that at the edge of the battlefield, a team of members of the 4th Division's rescue team were already rushing towards this direction. Obviously, the situation in the Seireitei was extremely tragic on the surface, but in fact the situation was completely under the command of this wartime command center, which commanded all aspects in an orderly manner. This made Ichigo Kuroseki feel a little emotional, compared with the GOTY 13 led by Captain General Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni 2 years ago. The current GOTY 13 seems to have undergone tremendous changes invisibly. The GOTY 13 inches the past was more like a group of violent organizations fighting alone, and the current GOTY 13 really gave Ichigo Kuroseki the feeling of a military organization. As expected of Lord Senju, even though his Bankai was taken away, he still used his unique medical skills and abilities to protect the entire GOTY 13 division with all his strength. Kuroseki Ichigo couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. However, the next moment, Izanao's answer made Kuroseki Ichigo's eyes widen. No, Lord Senju was dealing with 4 members of the Holy Cross Knights at the same time, so he could only barely maintain the injuries of the wounded. You know, before Lord Senju was forced to attack, the entire GOTY 13 division still had no death toll. But after Kuroseki Ichigo reacted, he couldn't help but ask anxiously. How can this be? Didn't Lord Senju's Bankai be taken away? Even if Lord Senju had to deal with 4 members of the Holy Cross Knights at the same time, it would be too much for him, right? I want to support Lord Senju. Lord Senju's battlefield is in that direction. Don't be naive. Kuroseki Ichigo, this is a war. Izanao scolded and said. Senju-sama also stepped onto the battlefield with resolution in his heart. If possible, please believe that there are countless Shinigami in the GOTY 13 who were more unwilling than you to see Senju-sama forced to take action. Chapter 770 Wartime Command. Izanao's words made Kuroseki Ichigo react suddenly. Indeed, with Senju Makoto's status and prestige in the Seireitei, if the situation was not very bad, then there would probably be no god of death willing to see Senju Makoto personally step onto the battlefield. After all, now Senju Makoto is not only the strongest combat force of the GOTY 13, but also the life guarantee that can cover the entire Seireitei with healing ability at any time. I understand. Kuroseki Ichigo took a deep breath and asked. Then what should I do next? The voice from Izanao paused slightly, and then spoke quickly. Go to the direction of the 10th Division's barracks. The opponent that Captain Hitsugaya encountered is quite restrained by Horimaru in terms of ability. After his Bankai was taken away by the opponent with the star chapter, he has fallen into a complete disadvantage. Kurosaki Ichigo's mind flashed the arrogant appearance of Hitsuge Ayashiro, and he quickly went to the direction of the 10th Division's barracks and asked, "Wait, didn't we already know that the Invisible Empire has the ability to seize Bankai? Why did Captain Hitsuge Aya still have his Bankai taken away by the enemy?" Izanagi replied. In fact, it's not just Captain Hitsuge Aya, but a total of 7 Bankai, including the captain and the vice-captain, were taken away by the enemy. Kurosaki Ichigo. For a moment, Kurosaki Ichigo was a little confused, and even suspected that he was hallucinating. Obviously, the GOTY 13 knew that the other party had the ability to seize Bankai, and the Bankai that was taken away at the beginning was Master Senju's Bankai. Didn't the GOTY 13 make any preparations? 7 Bankai were taken away. How many Shinigami in the GOTY 13 openly possessed Bankai? Isn't this going to be given away for nothing? How could it be? Before Kurosaki Ichigo could finish his question, Izanagi's voice continued and said, "Mr. Kurosaki, I'm only telling you this because you'll definitely notice it when you support Captain Hitsuge Aya later, so I'm only telling you this part of the information in advance. Mr. Kurosaki only needs to know that the current situation is still under the control of the GOTY 13th Division." Listening to the still calm voice of Izanagi, Ichigo Kurosaki's heart also unconsciously calmed down, vaguely aware that there might be some plan that he didn't know about. However, the next moment, Izanagi's voice rang out. "Mr. Kurosaki, can you speed up a little bit? Captain Hitsuge Aya is about to collapse." Sorry. Upon hearing this, Ichigo Kurosaki subconsciously accelerated his unconsciously slowed down speed again, and quickly headed towards the direction of the 10th Division. At the same time, in a secret space underground of the 1st Division, a large number of Shinigami wearing Shinigami costumes were communicating with someone in a hurried tone. And these Shinigami were maintaining a unique hidden gesture, as if they were constantly exchanging various information with the mesh structure that combined technology and hidden at the top of the underground space. Izanagi is one of them. In fact, this is also an invention completed by Mayuri Kurosachi by combining the 77th way of binding Tentiakuro with the science of spirit particles under the instruction of Makoto Senju in the past 2 years. The original the 77th way of binding Tentiakuro only has the function of temporary one-way information transmission. This invention can support the operator to actively capture the target's spiritual pressure within a certain range, and then conduct normal dialogue and communication. Perhaps, on the surface, this function is mediocre. But in the center of this underground space, Zaraki Futuri is also copying the situation of the entire Seireitei 1-to-1, so that every battle in the entire Seireitei can be seen at a glance. A large amount of information about the Holy Cross Knights, which was amiss to the 13th Division of the GOTY in the past, is also being collected and summarized in large quantities every moment. And based on the collected information, this wartime command center constantly remotely controls the support of every battle in the Seireitei. It is precisely because of this that the GOTY 13 was able to maintain the situation and avoid a complete defeat even after losing 7 Bankai. After Izanagi temporarily completed the task of guiding Kurosaki Ichigo, the heated discussion of the analysis team led by Hidomaro Lisa behind him also clearly reached Izanagi's ears. "I said that idiot Rogue Guru Kensei couldn't deal with El Patriarca Brava, isn't this trouble? I didn't expect that Captain Rogue Guru May, who already had a general idea of the enemy's abilities, would still firmly believe that his fists would be faster than his opponent's abilities. To be honest, Captain Rogue Guru May's courtship dance is really great. Don't say those meaningless words. What do Captain Kotetsu and Vice Captain Loki think of Rogue Guru May Kensei's injuries? Physical injuries will take at least an hour to recover, but it seems that the psychological injuries are more serious. Captain Rogue Guru may need psychological treatment intervention. There is no time for that. Let's activate the emergency force. Let Daiki Dojo go to support Captain Kuchika. Captain Mayuri Kurosachi will need half an hour. Captain Kuchika probably won't be able to hold on for half an hour." Izanagi did not pay attention to the hurried discussion. As the former vice captain of the intelligence division, Lisa Hidomaro has a strong ability in intelligence analysis. Of course, if it was Kikushansui who was completely serious, he might be able to do it more perfectly than Hidomaro Lisa. But now the Seireitei is quite dangerous, so Senju-sama was worried and did not invite Kikushansui, who had lost most of his spiritual power, to be in charge of the intelligence analysis team. However, at present, Yido Merilisa's various judgments and analyses are still quite powerful, barely maintaining the situation of fighting in various parts of Seireitei. Now, what Izanagi is most worried about is Senju-sama's condition. Even though his Bankai was taken away, Senju Makotao is actually dealing with the siege of 4 members of the Holy Cross Knights at the same time, and still maintaining medical support covering the entire Seireitei. Even though Izanagi was quite confident when he stopped Kurosaki Ichigo, in fact, Izanagi was also worried about Senju Makotao. However, the entire wartime command center also understood that if Senju Makotao had not dragged the 4 members of the Holy Cross Knights, the situation in Seireitei would have collapsed completely. According to the information collected so far about the Holy Cross Knights, every Holy Cross Knight who possesses the Holy Word has the power of a death god that is no less than the captain, or even far exceeds that of an ordinary captain. It is conceivable that the pressure faced by Senju Makotao is so great that he can be said to be carrying the Jinglitung forward. Chapter 771. Electricity kills the punishment. Boom. At this moment, in front of the square of the 1st Squadron's barracks, which had already been turned into ruins, a thunderbolt with a destructive aura fell from the sky and blew up a big pit. In the diffuse smoke, Senju Makotao's figure pulled himself out and retreated. In the next moment, the large piece of smoke was blown away in an instant, and Minina Makaran, whose figure was somewhat similar to the sacred letter P of Inule or Ihime, with her tiny body, incredibly lifted up an entire house with one hand and smashed it towards Senju Makotao. Senju Makotao's expression did not change, and the zanpakutō in his hand moved. Swoosh! A flash of knife light passed by. The whole house was instantly cut in half. However, before Senju Makotao could catch his breath, a bloody mouth that was exaggerated enough to swallow 100 Senju Makotao at once bit Senju Makotao from the side. The next moment, as Senju Makotao raised his finger, huge trees rose from the ground and hit the lower jaw of the bloody mouth, forcing it to shut up. Although this bloody mouth came from a Lolita, Senju Makotao was obviously not sure what would happen if he was bitten by the other party's bloody mouth. The next moment, the bloody mouth shrank rapidly and returned to the cherry mouth of a Lolita wearing an invisible imperial military cap and a white button-down dress. And this Lolita couldn't help but cover her mouth with both hands, her eyes flashing with tears, and she cried out in pain. It hurts, how can this man be so difficult? As Senju Makotao dodged a series of attacks and distanced himself again, P. Minina, who looked like Inui or Ihime, also stopped chasing and said with a distressed expression, "Yeah, we can't hit him no matter what, he's too fast." Then, a woman with electric light all over her body, wearing a sleeveless top and shorts and showing off her hot body, landed beside Minina and shouted irritably, "Ah! Minina, Litoto, why did you two stop? As long as you give me another chance, I will definitely kill that hateful god of death." The lily-like Litoto covered her mouth and stated, "My mouth hurts." Minina also said with some distress, "Jitis, my hands are also sore." When Jiri heard this, her angry face did not slow down, but the electric light on her body became more obvious. She turned her head and looked at Senju Makotao, who had fought for a long time but was still unscathed, and her anger became even hotter. Senju Makotao felt a little innocent for Jiri's glare. It was just to prevent Jiri and other Quincy from approaching the 1st Squadron's barracks that he accidentally cut off a section of Jiri's hair. Then, as if a switch had been triggered, Jodis was almost going crazy and determined to kill Senju Makotao. However, Senju Makotao did not bother with Jodis. Senju Makotao's eyes swept over Minina, whose holy text ability was P-Power, Jodis, T-Thunder, Litoto, G-Greedy, and Giselle, whose holy text ability was unknown and had 2 cockroach-like hairs standing far away. For now, Senju Makotao was happy to play with these Queensies for a while to relieve the pressure on the other battlefields in the Seireitei and buy some time for the plan that Meguri was carrying out. Now everything in the battle in the Seireitei is still as planned, and the current progress can even be called perfect. However, Senju Makotao's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. The Invisible Empire's invasion of the Gotti 13 can be said to have been fully launched, and nearly 20 members of the Holy Cross Knights with completely different holy text abilities invaded at the same time. On the surface, the Invisible Empire has completely suppressed the Seireitei at this moment. Except for the Captain Unohana Retsu, all the open forces of the 13th Gotti squad, including Senju Makotao, seem to be forced out. It can be said that the Seireitei looked as if it had reached the point where the Invisible Empire could completely destroy it with a little more effort. However, Ithwatch had not yet appeared, and Haskvalth, who impressed Senju Makotao, had not appeared either. So, Ithwatch, what are you waiting for? Senju Cheng frowned slightly and began to guess secretly. Are you too cautious, so you are still testing the bottom line of the 13th Gotti squad? Or do you have another purpose? However, seeing that Senju Cheng's eyes seemed to gradually become empty, as if he didn't take her seriously at all, it undoubtedly further angered Candace. You, damn bastard dead god. Candace's smooth forehead was clearly pierced with blue veins, and a 5-pointed star suddenly appeared on her head, and a pair of multiple lightning-like wings extended from her back. In an instant, the spiritual pressure of Jobs increased dramatically, causing Senju Cheng to slightly shift his mind from his unconscious wandering thoughts back to Jobs' perfect holy body. This term flashed through Senju Cheng's mind. This is also the posture of the Queency clan to release their true power. It is different from the perfect holy body that traditional Queencies need to use the spirit-scattering gloves to release at the cost of losing their abilities. When the Holy Cross Knights attacked the Zai Palace before, Senju Cheng observed that the perfect holy body now mastered by the Holy Cross Knights was more powerful, and it seemed to only cause a certain degree of additional burden on the body. At this moment, Jobs felt for the first time the feeling of being looked at by Senju Cheng, and a cruel smile unconsciously appeared on her face, and she spoke. Asshole death god, it's too late even if you kneel down and apologize to me now. I will let you know the price of anger in me. The next moment, Jiede's figure, accompanied by lightning, quickly approached Senju Cheng at a much faster speed than before, and pulled out a pair of lightning-like sabers from the lightning wings spread out behind her. Go to hell, bastard. Ganon Javelin. The pair of lightning-like sabers with an electric power of up to 5 billion joules instantly turned into 2 lightning lights and slashed towards Senju Cheng's position. Wherever the terrifying lightning spread, even the air exuded a strong smell of burning. Boom. It was like a punishment from heaven. With the lightning lightsaber hitting Senju Cheng's position, the ball-like lightning aftermath began to rage wildly around. But even so, Jiede still had no intention of stopping. Instead, after appearing above Senju Cheng, she put her 5 fingers of her right hand together and raised them above her head. Endless lightning condensed wildly in Jiede's right hand, and then suddenly let it down. Lightning to destroy. In an instant, a terrifying lightning pillar with a diameter of more than 20 meters appeared, like a divine punishment from the sky fallen to the earth, madly annihilating everything, even causing the entire ground to shake. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 772. Returning to the original fighting style. The world-destroying lightning lasted for several breaths. The amazing power was almost as if a lightning sun had risen in this square. Even Minina and Litoto, who were quite familiar with Jobs, were quite surprised by this scene. Such a terrifying power was enough to kill most of the members of the Holy Cross Knights. Jobs is serious, so scary. Is Jobs so strong? It seems that we should not play with her hair casually in the future. Jobs did not notice Minina and Litoto whispering, but focused all her attention on the front. It was not until the world-destroying lightning pillar left a bottomless abyss on the ground that Jobs, who had almost poured out most of her power, stopped panting. Then, Jobs' mouth opened, and she couldn't help laughing wildly. Ha ha ha. The bastard god of death, is he finally dead? The laughter, which revealed a hearty laugh, continued to echo in the square. There was even a lot of echoes due to the appearance of a bottomless pit on the ground. Although it is not polite to ruin other people's joy, I'm not dead yet. Senju Cheng's still gentle and calm voice slowly sounded, and Jobs' laughter stopped abruptly. As the last smoke floating on the pit below dissipated, a 3-person high charred wooden giant egg appeared in front of Jobs. Then, as if peeling a shell, starting from the outermost charred blab, the entire wooden giant egg bloomed like a lotus, revealing Senju Cheng, who was unharmed inside. And in the entire bottomless pit, only the foot of Senju Cheng stood on the ground to retain some land. Jobs looked at this scene, and the whole person was struck by lightning, muttering. Actually, nothing happened. How is that possible? Miss Candace seems surprised. After a pause, Senju Cheng said with a little more emotion. Actually, I should be the one who is surprised. I thought that Miss Candace's huge voice would be a shocking blow, so I was panicked and laid 3 layers of defense. I didn't expect that the final result was that the outermost layer was slightly burned by electricity. In this way, isn't it a waste of power? If you can't retain enough power, it will be even more difficult to defeat you much of the time. At the end, Senju Cheng's voice, which seemed to contain distress and regret, made Candace's face flushed with anger. What a hateful man. With a gentle tone of emotion, he conveyed the most sarcastic and contemptuous attitude. What in a panic? Where can you see panic? Even using a little more power on me feels like an unnecessary waste on trash. Candace glared at Senju Cheng and shouted. Asshole, who are you calling trash? Senju Cheng said in an innocent and gentlemanly tone. Ah? How could I say such rude words to Miss Katie? I have always treated the entire Holy Cross Knights equally. This time, the furious Katie was rarely smart. Or perhaps, the bastard dead god in front of her deliberately did not hide his venomous tongue, so Katie understood what Senju Cheng meant in seconds. Treat everyone equally. Isn't this just saying that the entire Holy Cross Knights are trash? Katie's entire rationality seemed to be swallowed up by anger, and her expression was twisted and weird with a sneer. Hectares. Ha ha. Even the death god whose Bankai was taken away, dares to be so arrogant. Senju Cheng nodded and agreed. Ah, yes, Miss Jiraiya can't even deal with a Shinigami who can only use Seireitei. For a moment, that yes seemed to have some kind of magic, which made Jiraiya's last string of reason completely break. I will kill you. Jiraiya screamed with a distorted face, and the lightning wings behind her shook. She drew out a pair of lightning lightsabers again, and rushed towards Senju Cheng madly. She looked like a ferocious beast that wanted to tear Senju Cheng into pieces. Since the long-range thunder will be blocked by those annoying woods, I will chop you into pieces at close range. However, facing Jiraiya's distorted and furious expression, Senju Cheng couldn't help but laugh. Unlike the gentle smile before, this time Senju Cheng's smile was a little more frank and sincere. Speaking of which, Senju Cheng hadn't met such an opponent for a long time. There was no scheming, no defense or game. He fought with emotions and instincts throughout the whole process, and the main point was to return to nature. This made Senju Cheng feel like he had returned to the Mao Spiritual Academy. He usually faced a pair of clear and stupid eyes. Even if he said something outrageous, his classmates would react with a "Zundu fake do." But this smile made Jiraiya feel like she was a rebellious and unweaned beast in the eyes of Jiraiya, and Senju Cheng, as a generous master, was giving her great tolerance. Anger completely overwhelmed Jiraiya, completely ignoring Minina and Litoto, who realized something was wrong and were quickly coming to support her. Tear you apart. However, just as Jiraiya approached Senju Cheng at a certain distance, Jiraiya's angry roar stopped abruptly. A wooden long knife that appeared from the ground at some point seemed to have predicted the trajectory of Goddess's movements and instantly pierced Goddess's chest. Goddess' pupils shrank and she felt her power quickly dissipating. On the contrary, the Senju Cheng, who seemed to be standing motionless close to her, had a hateful smile on his face. Goddess. Minina and Litoto are both shocked when they saw this. They had never expected the situation to change so quickly. It was clear that they had the upper hand not long ago, chasing and blocking Senju Cheng all the way, but Senju Cheng, who was marked as a special combat force, was too slippery to catch him at all. Unexpectedly, after Goddess released the complete holy body, she was killed instantly. As Senju Cheng's eyes turned from Goddess to the direction of Minina and Litoto instinctively stopped and even took a step back. The same thought came to their minds and they muttered. Is this man still so strong even without his Bankai? Chapter 773. Small body, huge amount of bleeding. Upon hearing this, Senju Cheng moved his feet and instantly crossed the abyss pit left by Goddess, and appeared in front of Minina and Litoto, answering. Not particularly strong, just a little bit stronger than you. In an instant, Minina and Litoto felt the terrifying unknown feeling from Senju Cheng, who had been chasing and blocking all the way and was harmless, and subconsciously retreated again. Miss Minina and Miss Litoto, didn't you chase me all the way just now? Why are you retreating now that I'm approaching you? Senju Cheng seemed to be a little confused when he asked back, but his relatively tall body was still approaching Minina and Litoto step by step without haste, and the shadow created by his back to the sun seemed to swallow Minina and Litoto bit by bit. Gurgle. Compared with Goddess's bold and irritable personality, Minina and Litoto were undoubtedly the timid type. Facing the invisible and oppressive Senju Cheng approaching little by little, Minina and Litoto could not help swallowing their saliva while retreating. Death God, if you come any closer, don't blame me for being rude to you. Senju Cheng asked back. Why not? After a pause, Senju Cheng continued. Since you are not chasing me anymore, how about exchanging positions? Now it's your turn to run away. If I catch you, hehe, as Senju Cheng laughed with a bit of ridicule. Behind Senju Cheng, there were green grasses that expanded and grew rapidly, turning into giant trees similar to tentacles, and like a giant cobra, they aimed at Minina and Litoto and took up chasing posture. Suddenly, a voice sounded above Senju Cheng's head. Litoto, Minina, I'm here to save you. Senju Cheng looked in the direction of the voice, and it was Giselle, who had never attacked him before, but only watched the battle from a distance, and had two obvious cockroach-like hairs on her head. Moreover, it was somewhat ridiculous that Giselle, who had arrived before the voice came, fell down from top to bottom in a big shape towards Senju Cheng. This, isn't it reminding the enemy to attack him? Senju Cheng seemed relaxed on the surface, but he still maintained a basic vigilance towards Giselle, whose ability was unknown. Before, Senju Cheng, who had been teasing Candice, Minina and Litoto was playing, was actually testing the other party's holy text ability in this way to confirm the degree of threat. Until the depth of the three of them was completely explored, Senju Cheng would not rush to follow them back and forth, pretending that he was being dragged by the other party, waiting for the appearance of Yuhabok. However, even though he was aware of Giselle's intention, Senju Cheng would never rashly let a queency with unknown abilities approach him. Confidence does not mean arrogant and arrogant. The next moment, the two giant trees changed from being extremely quiet to extremely active, and crashed towards Giselle. Bang! With two huge dull sounds, Giselle's thin body, which looked like a flat girl, flew back at a much faster speed than when she came, almost like a kite with a broken string, and fell heavily behind Litoto and Minina. Moreover, Giselle endured two attacks from the giant tree, and half of her body seemed to be blown to pieces. During the backward flight, large pieces of blood were sprinkled on the ground like rain. A few drops of blood also dripped on Senju Cheng's body. Then, Senju Cheng stretched out his fingers and rubbed the blood. After a slight pause, he spoke. I didn't expect that with such a small body, the amount of blood loss is so shocking. Giselle, whose half of her body was blown up, got up from the ground little by little, and even made a cute face at Senju Cheng, saying with a smile. Of course, my holy word is dead, which is the ability called zombie. When she said this, Giselle's originally cute expression changed, and she spoke with a bit more gloomy and terrifying. Senju Cheng, who was listed as a special combat force by His Majesty, I have been waiting for this moment for a long time, and I long for you to become my cute zombie. I will treat you well, and it is not impossible for you to sleep in the same bed with me. Senju Cheng heard this, and seemed to grasp the point that should not be grasped, and refused. I refuse, I will not sleep in the same bed with a man. Man. Giselle's expression was obviously broken, and she spoke gloomily. Do you know what you are talking about? Who are you talking about as a man? Of course, it's you. Senju Cheng glanced at Giselle casually and spoke. Don't think that your clothes and body shape look the same as those of a normal girl, but unfortunately, as a professional doctor, I can't make a mistake in judging the differences in the details of male and female bodies. Crunched. Giselle's teeth grinded clearly, and she spoke as if she had been poked at a pain point that she absolutely didn't want to mention. I changed my mind, Senju Cheng. I originally wanted to keep you, but now, I want to control you, and then let you destroy all your companions and even the entire Jingling court with your own hands, so that your consciousness will be in pain forever. Have you started talking nonsense because of your gender identity disorder? Senju Cheng raised his eyebrows. Hehehe, since you just got stained with my blood, the ending has been doomed. Any god of death who gets stained with my blood will turn into a zombie controlled by me. When she said this, Giselle's voice suddenly stopped, and she blurted out subconsciously when she looked at Senju Cheng, whose face was still ruddy. What's going on? Why haven't you turned into a zombie yet? Senju Cheng smiled, raised his bloody finger and said. Is this the blood you're talking about? Unfortunately, let's not talk about whether they have a chance to really touch my spirit body. More importantly, you seem to underestimate me as the former vice captain of the 4th Division. If you want to break this level of toxins, I can easily think of 10 different ways. The next moment, Senju Cheng controlled the invisible spirit membrane covering the surface of his body to shake, instantly shattering all the stained blood. Although Senju Cheng has many ways to cure this blood toxin, and this level of toxins will not have an effect on the ultimate spirit body, but Senju Cheng doesn't want his body to be stained with the blood of this pseudo-girl with unknown sexual orientation. Chapter 774 Complete Holy Body Sealing. Chapter 774. Complete Holy Body Seal. Impossible. Facing Senju Cheng's answer, Giselle looked like she had seen a ghost, and said with a distorted face, "I don't believe it. It's absolutely impossible. There must be not enough blood," Giselle said as she raised her hand to pull the part of her body that was blown apart. While forcibly bleeding, the whole person began to quickly enter the complete holy body state. However, before Giselle could make any move, 8 giant trees-like spears suddenly emerged from the ground around him. Puff puff puff. The 8 giant trees-like spears closed together and instantly completely submerged Giselle's originally petite figure. Only large pieces of blood plasma splashed out from the gaps between the 8 giant trees, scaring Litotto and Minina so much that their faces turned pale. Ah! Giselle's spiritual pressure is gone. You, don't come over. At this moment, Minina and Litotto completely realized the unimaginable gap between the two sides. If the defeat of Goddess was just an accident, then Giselle was undoubtedly a complete crushing defeat. In fact, the whole process was almost as easy and simple as crushing an ant. Facing the panicked Minina and Litotto, Senju Cheng showed a kind and gentle smile and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm not a bad person." In an instant, Minina and Litotto were undoubtedly more scared, and even scared out of their perfect holy body by Senju Cheng's words. Seeing this scene, Senju Cheng was a little helpless. Why, when I tell the truth, no one believes it? Is it because people don't like to hear the truth? The reason why Senju Cheng killed Giselle in seconds is simply because Giselle's ability may not have much effect on him, but it may cause great hidden dangers. Since Giselle can control the God of Death with her blood ability, she must be able to control the members of the Holy Cross Knights who died in the battle. By then, if Giselle accidentally pulls out an astonishing number of captain-level zombies, it will undoubtedly cause considerable trouble. Of course, more importantly, Senju Cheng does not want Giselle's pseudo-girl blood to spread randomly in the jingling court. What if something bad happens? As for Minina and Litotto, Senju Cheng is not going to kill them. In addition to the fact that their holy text abilities are not threatening, more importantly, Senju Cheng is going to leave something in their bodies. The next moment, Minina and Litotto only felt a flash in front of their eyes, and then Senju Cheng's figure still appeared in front of them, completely blocking their sight. Before Minina and Litotto instinctively retreated, they suddenly felt a pain in their lower abdomen. Subconsciously, Minina and Litotto looked down and saw Senju Cheng's left and right hands inserted into their lower abdomens respectively. "Relax, take a deep breath, it's okay." Senju Cheng's gentle voice sounded just like a doctor who was trying his best to comfort a patient. However, in the eyes of Minina and Litotto, all this seemed to be a crisis of death. At this moment, Minina and Litotto, who had already entered the perfect body state, almost simultaneously attacked Senju Cheng in front of them. However, Senju Cheng smiled and said, "That's about it, this game ends here." Almost as soon as Senju Cheng's voice fell, Minina and Litotto's perfect body seemed to be disturbed by something, and then they forcibly exited the perfect body state. Minina and Litotto are stunned, and they didn't understand what happened. Why did the perfect body end, forcibly? And Senju Cheng slowly pulled out his palm from his lower abdomen and said, "Don't be surprised. You, the Holy Cross Knights, can master the moves to seize Bankai, and the 13th Gotti squad can also find a way to seal your perfect holy body. Isn't this normal?" Almost at the same time that Senju Cheng finished speaking, Izanalneo's voice rang in the ears of the friendly forces within the entire Seireitei. Captain Kurosaki Mairi has instantly completed the research on sealing the perfect holy body of the Invisible Empire. Immediately, all Shinigami are allowed to use the Shadow Invasion drug to enter the stage of a full-scale counterattack against the Invisible Empire. It was at this moment that not only Minina and Litotto, but also the Holy Cross Knights who were using the perfect holy body suddenly exited the perfect holy body state. What's going on? The perfect holy body was forcibly exited. Is it the enemy's fault? How is it possible? In contrast to the incredible expressions of the Holy Cross Knights, the faces of the many Shinigami who were previously suppressed by them began to smile. After struggling for so long, and even deliberately letting the enemy seize Bankai through the Star Seal, I finally waited for this moment. At this moment, on the battlefield of the 2nd Division's barracks, with many scars all over her body, Seireitei wiped the corners of her mouth that were oozing blood, and said something with some dissatisfaction. "Have you finally completed that research?" It's so slow. Mayuri Kurosaki, and opposite Seireitei was the modified robot by J9, whose sacred letter was K and had the ability called information reading. At this moment, Nane stared at Seireitei with an incredible tone. He had the ability of information reading, but he couldn't understand why he could sense that many companions who had entered the perfect body would exit the perfect body at the same time. Is it you who did it, Death God? No, based on the abilities I read from you, you don't have the ability to seal or target the perfect body with your zanpakutō. Nane said, and quickly denied this speculation. Seireitei changed her previous embarrassed and ugly expression, and said with an attitude of winning. Hehe, why do you think we used our Bankai to be taken away by you when the battle just started even though we knew you had the ability to seize Bankai? You rats hiding in the shadows seem to have a narrower vision than we imagined. Do you think that we Shinigami only have the ability of zanpakutō? It's not just you. Now all the perfect scent body within the scope of the Seireitei has been sealed and cannot be used. Victory belongs to the 13th Gotti squad. You rats, prepare to die. Hearing this, Nane was silent for a while, then took out the star seal and said, Don't forget, even if you seal the perfect scent body, what does it matter? You still can't use Bankai, but I can use your Bankai. Chapter 775. Youthwatch's true target. Bankai. Sparrow V Thunder Whip. Bankai. Senbon Sakura Kijiyasu. Bankai. Digunram Horinmera. Bankai. Morakumai Buddha. For a while, after the Holy Cross Knights realized that the perfect holy body had been banned by the Gotti 13th Division in some unknown way, almost all the members of the Holy Cross Knights who were fighting with the Death Gods put away their previous cat and mouse playing attitudes, and released the Bankai they had seized, trying to defeat the Death Gods as soon as possible. In particular, the Morakumai Buddha originally seized from Senju Cheng formed a huge posture that almost covered a squadron barracks. However, facing this scene, the Death Gods whose Bankai was seized all showed a playful smile, and then a special substance called invasion drug was taken out of their arms and integrated into their spirits. Suddenly, the Bankai that were originally seized by the Holy Cross Knights instantly disintegrated and returned to the hands of the Death Gods. What? The sudden change in the situation made the faces of the Holy Cross Knights show expressions of disbelief and horror. Not only was the important perfect holy body sealed, but even the Bankai seized through the star seal was instantly lost. We've been fooled. Even the Bankai seized from the Gotti 13 was part of the trap. Suddenly, quite a few of the Holy Cross Knights with good brains realized the problem. In fact, with the abilities of Kurosaki Mayuri and Aizen Sosok, the shadow invasion drug used to counter the star seal from seizing the Bankai was completed in less than a day. After carefully analyzing the composition of the star seal and the process of seizing the Bankai, Kurosaki Mayuri and Aizen Sosok quickly realized that the hollowed-out spirit particles could easily destroy the internal balance of the star seal, thus making the star seal power ineffective. The shadow invasion drug, a substance that can allow a very small amount of hollowed-out spirit particles to remain in the body of the Shinigami, was easily manufactured. However, with Aizen Sosok's vision, he would not be satisfied with the ability to counter the star chapter. Instead, he set his sights on the perfect holy body, the most important posture of the Quincy. Through Aizen Sosok's research on Yakup's body, and even after using the power of Benyu to conduct a series of analyses, Aizen Sosok quickly found the direction to restrain the perfect holy body, and unexpectedly discovered that the star chapter that had seized the Bankai and the perfect holy body itself had a huge conflict, and the two sides could not coexist. In other words, when using the seized Bankai through the star chapter, the Holy Cross Knights could not enter the perfect holy body state. Moreover, even if the perfect holy body mastered by the Holy Cross Knights has been improved, the side effects have been greatly improved compared to 1,000 years ago. But the essence of the perfect holy body is still to absorb a large number of surrounding spirits into itself. The principle, and even the defects of conflict, have been placed in front of Senju Cheng, and Senju Cheng will naturally not miss this opportunity to seal the perfect body of the Holy Cross Knights. However, due to the short research time and the lack of experimental data and objects, therefore, before the invasion of the Invisible Empire, even Aizen Sosok and Kurosaki Mayuri could not complete the research on the ban of the perfect body. Therefore, only through the Bankai taken away by the Death Gods, through a part of the special spirit particles injected into the zanpakutō by Kurosaki Mayuri and Aizen Sosok in advance, a large amount of required research data and appearance can be quickly collected, and then the final research can be completed. Now, the entire Jingling court is filled with a special spirit particle for the perfect body. As long as the Holy Cross Knights enter the perfect body state, they must absorb the spirit particles from the outside world, and then they will be destroyed by the special spirit particles to maintain the balance of the perfect body, and then the perfect body can be banned. As for why the special spirit particles just created by the Technology Development Bureau can spread to the entire Jingling Court in an instant. For Senju Cheng, who possesses the ability of spiritual control, this can be achieved in a moment. The situation has reversed. Senju Cheng did not kill Minima and Litoto, but let Minima and Litoto flee in fear in front of him. Now, the original situation of the entire Seireitei has undergone a drastic reversal. Even among the members of the Holy Cross Knights, the number of captain-level spiritual pressure far exceeds that of the 13th Gotti. But at this stage, the 13th Gotti has not only completed a large amount of intelligence collection and restraint analysis of the Holy World ability of the Holy Cross Knights. More importantly, in addition to the Holy Cross Knights being banned from perfect holy body, all the Shinigami have also regained their own Bankai. With the rise and fall of one, the situation can be said to be completely reversed. However, Yuha Bark and Haskvalth, the leader of the Holy Cross Knights, are still not showing up. Senju Cheng's eyebrows flashed with a trace of worry. Senju had prepared a backup plan for Yuha and Haskvalth, but the problem now was, they didn't show up. This made Senju feel like the stage was ready, but the leading actors didn't show up. As for whether Yuha sneaked into the Seireitei without being discovered, it was almost impossible. Not to mention that Sarakisu was monitoring the changes inside the Seireitei the whole time. Senju spent most of his energy exploring the Seireitei back and forth, but he still didn't notice anything. Senju narrowed his eyes, and various speculations kept emerging in his mind. Where are the people? Could it be that Yuha's target is really not the Seireitei? What place is that? Kyukyo Palace. Impossible. Appearing in the world. There is no change in Karakura town. And since the Invisible Empire has invaded the Seireitei on a large scale, it at least has the purpose of attracting the attention of the 13th Gotti squad. So, suddenly, Senju thought of a possibility and his eyes suddenly opened. Mao Spiritual Academy. The next moment, Senju Cheng's figure instantly disappeared from the spot, and flew quickly towards the direction of the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts. However, Senju Cheng had just flown into the air. In the direction of the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts, the terrifying and scorching spiritual pressure belonging to Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni erupted. Temperature. With the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts as the center, the temperature within a radius of dozens of miles rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bankai. Zanpachi. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni actually released his Bankai directly. At this moment, countless Shinigami fighting fiercely in the Seireitei port, subconsciously looked in the direction of the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts, and had an ominous premonition in their hearts. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.